Howdy, you delicious people. I'm here today to review Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 3, Episodes 13 through 17. So, I had gone on to just take a bit of time away from doing Power Ranger reviews because of just really the length of the videos, but also just wanting to go on and just experiment for a bit with videos altogether and just have some fun with some projects, as well as also just trying to do easier projects because of just being unsure of how things were just kind of going, uh, as far as like me locking in and because I had some kind of just physical issues that I was just kind of trying to bounce back from, and luckily I seem to be fine now. So uh, here's where we are. Going into part two of Stop the Hate Monster, we come to find that this episode is just to be very simplistic compared to the more interesting kind of first part of this. We come to find that in episode 13 that the Rangers are still upset, so much so that Billy is to create a device that is to stop the command center from completely functioning, to have lost all its power. Aisha goes on to need to be teleported out of the command center and gives Alpha her heart necklace, hoping that Alpha will come up with some device at some point to uh, have it be to where the hate monster's hate can go on and uh, be cured or be uh, nullified. So we have Aisha that goes on and she goes without necklace to face off against the hate monster and eventually comes away with it to then find her friends and break the spell of her friends of hate, and then further goes on to, with the Rangers, defeat this hate monster. This episode altogether, like, I did I did like this two-parter. I would have liked it to have gone a little bit more, or also like I wish it would have gone somewhere, specifically in the two-parter. There was even at one point where Adam and Tommy were going to fight, and nothing happens out of that, which kind of sucks. I'm like, man, you couldn't have at least thrown a punch or a kick, and then it would have been broken up. Come on, like, if anything, from all the times of seeing Jason and Tommy fighting, like, I would like to have seen Tommy go on and fight anybody else from the Ranger team, no matter how briefly it would have been. It would have been very interesting to see that fight out. But oh well, that is what it is. So then we get to the final face off. This episode 14, is to probably be, in my opinion, my biased opinion, to probably be my favorited episode of the season so far. You have the Rangers going into the museum, which kind of reminds me of Dino Charge in a way. Uh, we have the characters going on and needing to find out the lore of the Face Stealer monster and needing to find out about the fourth moon and needing to find out about these masks. And eventually, by the episode, we do legitimately have this monster go and steal people's faces, which could probably go on and kind of be kind of very strange looking within this episode, because it really just has them have like this just white napkin over their faces, or the white gauze over their faces, and it looks kind of weird and creepy, I guess. But what were they going to do? Show you flesh? I don't think they were going to do that. So I really did like this episode. I thought that it had some just really interesting ideas, and so right now I feel that it's a really good episode compared to all the others. that I've seen so far. The potion notion. The potion notion is to give us this love spell of an episode. We have to be reminded that Rita had put Zed in a love spell via this episode. And so the whole thing of the episode is that Goldar is hopefully going to try and reverse the love spell that Rita had put on Zed. And also, this is going to be an episode that ends up having random bits of people who all start to fall in love with one another. Bulk falls in love with Aisha. Kimberly falls in love with Skull, because of course she does. And for how much I think all these episodes focus so much so on Aisha, speaking of her, yeah, there's so many episodes where I feel they focus on her compared to even like characters of the past of Kimberly or Tommy or any others. Yeah, like they really are focusing on Aisha so often, and I just don't quite get why. Uh, but anyways, so but in this potion notion episode specifically, like they don't focus on Aisha. I'm just saying overall. We have the monster Mischief or Mischief that is to be wreaking havoc and being Cupid, and Mrs. Appleby ends up getting into a love triangle with Mr. Kaplan and Stone. It's kind of an interesting, fun episode. Also, in the middle here, they bring up the Ninja Mega Ultrazord or whatever it is, the Ninja Ultrazord, and that thing. Obviously, they reuse stock footage from MMPR, and then after that, they just basically just have the Ninja Megazord and Titanus. They really just turn it into a toy and then just do it as the toy. Even so, further after that, like the chest piece of the Ninja Ultrazord has the Dragon Zord emblem on the front of it instead of the normal Titanus thing. So it's not even right. It's not even right. But I guess you would have to pause it just right to notice this stuff. But yeah, I guess it's not as Pimp Titanus as MVM PR Toys does. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you probably have to go on. You need to check out that YouTube channel of Pimp Titanus to just see that goofy thing where we have like an Ultrazord with all this bling and all this like jewelry and goofy stuff, which is hilarious. As well as also, at some point in one of the videos, they just have Steven Urkel and he's on the Ultrazord, and it's on some random video where Black Nerd Comedy comes to see them. So, anyways, so the Potion Notion episode is to be, I think, one of the goofier episodes of that season, or one of the more goofier episodes that I've probably seen in a while. So, that is that for you for that episode. I'm dreaming of a white ranger. Keep dreaming, because we don't even see a white ranger or much of any rangers really in this episode. We come to find that Zed is to go on and decide to make this this hypnosis toy that looks like a dreidel. That's very weird. And so Zed is wanting to plan that because of Christmas to have been this long tradition, and he wants to break it. So Zed is going on and having Rito go out to the North Pole to try and stop Santa and the elves and make this hypnosis toy, this brainwashing toy. So we would have the Rangers that go on and find out that North Pole is in trouble, and so they make their way to the North Pole. But they come to find out that their powers are not to be able to be used during the North Pole because of the North Pole being such a weird magical place that cannot go on and have them use their powers. Neither can Goldar and Rito be able to use theirs either. So I guess putting on a level playing field, but then also it's just like, dude, I want to see the Power Rangers morph at the North Pole and fight at the like. I think I would go on and at some point also see a number of other Power Rangers and Santa things later on. But eventually, I think Santa would go on and find the Rangers. He wouldn't be at the North Pole, so maybe that is the difference there. But still, I'm just like, okay, this doesn't quite make sense. So we have the Rangers, and they have to figure out a way to trick Rito and the Tengus from getting uh, out of the North Pole, uh, or out of Santa's shack or housing. And eventually they figure it out, and they eventually outsmart another one of Zed's plans. A Ranger catastrophe. So this again focuses on Aisha, because again, we always have to focus on Aisha. Even when we're not focusing on her, we have to continue back to realize that she's has to be a focus. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm just like, if anything, like, I think with Aisha's special ability of her kind of counteracting hate also kind of makes me go on and makes me feel very much kind of like, well, yeah, I think I have to go on and probably say that Aisha maybe be close to being like the best ranger of this season, just because she's dominantly focused, as well as also that special ability. Um, but then also, like, I don't want to sound insensitive here, and I don't want to talk about race at all. Um, but eventually, when I was to kind of hear some things in that episode where they were talking about it, like there was some kind of just kind of thing where I was thinking like, well, like this feels something that can come out of some kind of just like talking about race a little bit. But I don't really want to do that in this review because a lot of people could be like, you're this, you're that. No, like I just kind of felt that way while they were talking in this specific episode. So I don't want to point that out. You guys can put that into your own thoughts of whatever that means, because I don't want to go further and put my foot in my mouth. So, but if anything, let's get back in the Ranger catastrophe. So, we have this episode where Aisha is working alongside this animal shelter and is to find this stray cat coincidentally. The whole crux of the episode is for Aisha to hope that this cat is not going to be found by anybody. So Kimberly and Aisha can keep this cat and kind of keep it for their own. We find that this cat is none other than Catherine or Cat, the girl who ends up going on to eventually replace Kimberly, and is to be yet another kind of quasi evil ranger in some ways, as the start. So we have Cat that goes on to eventually to be working with Rita, and that is to be quite interesting. How eventually that gets revealed, and then they go on to have Cat eventually in the episode trick Tommy, and have the two of them get kind of sucked into this portal of this dimension. I had reviewed this episode specifically at some point in the past, so I think I'm to be a lot more very specific about this episode compared to now, where I probably am to just kind of rush through the details. So by all means, check out that prior review of the Rangers Catastrophe. I believe I've reviewed it at some point in the past because this episode looked very familiar to me. So you can check that out. So with that said, now to go on and just do a recapping of the top episodes so far. So, of course, Final Face Off, that episode that I just went on to describe to you, that's the best episode so far of this season. Then we have A Wizard for a Day, which is to be the Rocky teacher swapping thing, where eventually Rocky is to find that his friends are to be test tubes, and so he has to go on and try to figure out how to, with Ninja's help, be able to try to beat the monster that episode, as well as the monster going on and being just some normal human that Rito ends up taking uh, a wand to, and then he just becomes a monster, which is very unique for this season. A Brush with Destiny, this is the Kimberly episode where she finds out that her mother is going to France, and there is this artisanal monster. Yeah, it's and Kimberly's having horrible nightmares. She's having problems sleeping. Da da da. So, passing the lanterns. This is the Adam lantern story where he goes on and he has to find out how he can unleash this lantern's power, and he thinks that Zed has a lantern. They don't have the lantern, and so on and so forth. A Friend in Need. This is the Masked Rider. Edenoi Alpha 5 is to realize that his planet is in crisis, so he goes on and he alerts the Rangers to come to the command center, and they talk about it, and then Alpha ships them off to Edenoi. Stop the Hate Monster. Again, this two-parter is pretty decent. I guess this could easily go on and end up on this top list. Then, of course, I would say A Ranger Catastrophe. I think will be something that definitively will be an episode or be episodes that will go on and be prominently on this list at some point, unless there is to be something that is just by the end of the season to be just so profound that I'm to change my mind about this list altogether. Plus, it's also very early for A Ranger Catastrophe. Maybe it'll go on and be like way much higher on this list. I'm not quite sure. I just saw one-off episode. I'm like, whatever. So then we have Ninja Quest after that, which basically is the bare bones basic of like, this thing is only on the list because I feel that it should, but feasibly it's just copy and paste to the film, and really just has to be on this list because ninjetti powers, and that's about it. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to start breaking down this episode. I think it's about that time to get into spoiler territory. Spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil these episodes. Let me know in the comments below what is so far your favorite episode, or just recount any Power Ranger episode that is be the one you remember, the one you like, or whichever. Either way, at the end of the day, maybe at some point I will go on to either to see that episode, or maybe I will go on to have already seen it and be like, oh, okay, cool. If anything, yeah, I try as best as I can to try to be as fair as I can for all these things. I can go on and say that I feel that most of these episodes, I definitely feel that, like, of course, the hate master episodes, they're very mid. Like, I think most of these episodes were severely mid. Like, I didn't really care for the Christmas episode because I'm just like, like they didn't really accomplish anything here. So I think I could say that episode was probably bad or worse. I'll just say bad. There's some wholesome stuff in there that like I did really like about the episode. So that could be fair to just say that like it was bad because there was nothing really going on. But there was some wholesome stuff in there that I wish I could have honestly thumbs up the episode. Other than that, yeah, like all the rest of them are just kind of just very mid. I feel, besides the one that I like the most. But I'll go on and I'll recount them now as I spoil them all. So, going through scene for scene, Jelly Beans, think about that time to spoil all these episodes. So let's get into it. So the beginning of episode 13 starts us off, as this is to be Stop the Hate Monster Part 2. We start off this episode in the command center. Aisha is to be going on and to be scanned by Alpha to figure out why is it that she's immune to hate. Eventually they come across realizing it that there has to be a reason for Aisha to be immune to this, and they realize that it's her necklace. They find that it is emitting some kind of strong energy wave that ends up counteracting the hate. So shortly thereafter, they figure that out. All of a sudden, all the power in the command center goes completely dark, and Zordon is to fade away. The next thing we see is the Q Center. Billy is to go on and be uh, working on this device, and Kimberly comes by. It's like, oh, another invention. And every bit of the way in which that these rangers are all talking to one another, they're very much talking sarcastically to one another because they technically hate one another, even though they're so easily wanting to be around one another up until a certain point. So as Tommy notices that Billy had created this device to stop Zordon, Tommy goes over and is to be so happy that Billy made this device. Like, oh yeah, now finally, I won't be bugged by Zordon ever again. And then Rocky then leaves shortly thereafter that because he's like, yeah, I'm so happy I don't need to be around you clowns. It's like, okay, whatever. He could have left any time, but he stuck around just to leave at the appropriate amount of time. If anything, there's to me, I feel in a lot of these episodes, there's some kind of like breaking of reality going on because, like, it doesn't quite. If we're being real, like, it doesn't quite make sense for this to be reality. It has to be like storyboarded this way. It has to be like written this way for us to know how all the Rangers are to be angry right now to recap us of the previous episode. And that's why they have to be all together in one area. So, cut to the Moon Palace, and Rita and Zed are now going on to be happy with the fact that the Rangers are acting so nasty, it's almost cute. So, they still are on alert, though, that Aisha could be the one thing that is to be changing the tide. And that she's a renegade ranger, and they don't, of course, like stuff like that. So, cut to the command center. Aisha and Alpha have gone on to realize that even the backup generators are not working. And so they're trying to figure out who could have been the one to have shut down their power. And Alpha is to make the realization that there's only one person who could have been suspected the most, and that is to be Billy. That Billy is to be the only one that knows the ins and outs of their workings and their devices. So it has to have been Billy who is to have gone on and put out their power. So they're starting to eventually figure out that they need to teleport out of the command center to try and get to Billy to go on and try to figure out how he was to go on and stop the command center from working. But Alpha goes on to state that there is no way for them to be able to go on right now and teleport anybody in or out. But eventually they will figure it out at some point in this episode. So Now we have Bulk and Skull. Bulk and Skull are going undercover to try to figure out who the graffiti bandit is. We would come to find that there is some person going on and graffitiing around town, and eventually, when we find out who the person actually is, the reveal is honestly just kind of stupid. So, Bulk and Skull go on and they're undercover as these waiters, hoping that, I guess, being these waiters will reveal who the graffiti bandit is. Which, if anything, it's not really that case. It's just trying to deliver some comedy here. So, Bulk and Skull go on to make their way to this table, and one guy is to be demanding water. Coincidentally, this same guy who's demanding water had been in another other Mighty Morphin Power Rangers episode at the end credit scene, uh, where Bulk and Skull were delivering tickets. So I guess they just consistently use the same extras over and over. So Bulk and Skull go on to accidentally drop some trays onto a woman, and they try to figure out a way to make her to possibly make coffee or serve her something that will go on and make her happy, but to no avail. So, cut to the Moon Palace. Zed is to go on and hope that uh, they're going to be able to serve up more hate in the future, and hope that the Rangers will all go on and destroy one another from all of the hatred and fear and furiousness that they have all combined all into one of them, or one into all of them. So Rita goes on and mentions that hopefully after all of this is said and done, that finally they will go on their honeymoon. And Zed is to realize that yeah, like, well, I guess if Rita's to go on and probably want the honeymoon, like then we need to kind of accelerate things. We need to kind of amp things up. So Zed goes on and he thrusts his wand into the air to then have a lightning bolt come down to the ground. We now have the Hate Master that is to go on and make his way through the park and finds both Bulk and Skull there. This time around, we have the Hate Monster that doesn't need to go on and needs to gather footprints of sand or anything of that. No, this time around, the Hate Monster just goes on and sees both Bulk and Skull and uses his powers of persuading them to hate to eventually have them start to be waving their hands and doing what he wants them to do. So, oddly enough, all of a sudden, both Bulk and Skull start to act like Robert De Niro all of a sudden. It makes no sense. So, we have Bulk that goes on and grabs Skull's mustache and takes it from off of his face and then shoves it into his nose nostril. And so the next thing we cut to is Aisha. She's in the command center, realizing that Zed has really done a doozy this time around. And it's like, how would you know? Because if anything, you're at the command center and the power is off. How do you have any idea what Zed is doing right now? So Aisha and Alpha are still trying to figure out how to get power to teleport Aisha out of here. And Aisha comes up with the idea that they could power up the command center by using Alpha. Because technically, Alpha is also a power source. So we now cut to the youth center. There is some random guy in a blue tank top who goes on to want to have some space of the youth center to be used. And Adam interrupts him and says, "Hey man, I got this spot right now." How about you get out of here? Immediately after Adam goes on and takes that spot, Tommy also interrupts Adam, and he says that he's like, well, no, I own this spot. So now we have both Adam and we have both Tommy that are realizing they're going to have to come to blows in order to figure out who has this spot or not. So, cut back to the command center. Aisha has now gone on and adjusted Alpha to the point of going on and realizing that soon that Aisha will be able to teleport out of here. Aisha is asking Alpha if Alpha will be able to teleport her exactly to the youth center, and Alpha says no. If anything, Aisha will have to go on and make her way to the park and then just try to get to the youth center that way. So, because eventually both Alpha and Aisha find out that the youth center is to be the source of where the power blockage is coming from. So Aisha teleports to the park, and Zed realizes that Aisha is on the move. Zed goes on and sends some Tenku warriors after Aisha. Immediately when we go on and we start this fight between Aisha, who changes into her ninja powers, she ends up doing this really cool split as the Tenku warriors kind of grab her legs and they force her into this split. And then, like, Aisha goes on and does all of these flips and all these really cool moves. And while the Tengas are distracting Aisha, some other Tengas are going on and they're gathering up Aisha's footprints, and they're kind of collecting her her essence in some ways. So her essence of footprint. So after the Tengas have gone on and done enough of that, the Tengas all start to disappear, and Aisha's very confused about what exactly is going on. The next thing we see is that the Tengas are giving Hate Master the dust, so that way Hate Master goes on and uses the dust to be able to make Aisha hate. So you would think Aisha would go on and decide to run away here, knowing full well that if Aisha spends too much time with the hate master, master debater, that she will go on and fall under the hate spell. So Aisha should have ran here, but she didn't. I don't know how many times so many other stuff like the real Ghostbusters or any other things when eventually when their first plan fails, they realize, oh, I guess we should just run now because that's all we have really left to do. So the Hate Master goes on and starts to use his spell against Aisha, and we're assuming that Aisha is soon going to fall like all the other Rangers do. And what the heck else are they going to do after that? Is Alpha going to have to go on and figure out how to stop the Rangers from hating? So Zed and Rita at this point are to assume that they have this in the bag, that the Yellow Ranger is to be the last one to go under the Hate Master spell, so they think they've won at this point. And so they're thinking about how in the future the Earthlings are going to be in their slaves, because we're focusing back on the Moon Palace and on Rita and Zed here. So it's kind of funny as the Hate Monster is, or Hate Master, Master Debater is going on, and he's continuing to do his spell, and like he's getting closer and closer to the frame. And it's honestly kind of funny how like Hate Master Hate Master goes on and is talking eventually how rhyming is very difficult. I think that was kind of funny. So Aisha, the whole entire time that Hate Master is trying to get her under his spell, Aisha is to go on in her brain and is to be reminded of her grandmother and her cherished words of being strong and rise above and love conquers all. And Aisha completely breaks away the spell and so Hey Master realizes that there's nothing he can do at this point. He has to go on and he needs to recharge, and so he has to leave because there's nothing else he could do. Rita tells Zed how Aisha had just gone on to beat uh, Hate Master. And so the next thing we see is the youth center. Adam and Tommy are coming close to blows, even though nothing ever happens. And Aisha comes in and breaks it up, saying how fighting is used for a sport and how it should be used to hurt one another. That if anything, fighting should be a gift and it should be used as a way of honor and dignity. So, as Aisha is continuing to tell her friends all this goody good stuff, that eventually this spell of hate starts to break away from them, but I think not completely. We see that Billy is to hand Aisha the device of which that he used. And Aisha takes the device and stops the device from working to where the power comes back into the command center. And now Alpha 5 is now in a very much relief of being happy that Aisha had figured this out. So now Alpha has the ability to use Aisha's necklace and make a device out of it to make a more positive energy beam. So that way it breaks away of anybody who is already afflicted uh, by the hate spell. Rita, looking at her telescope, is now upset, realizing that the Rangers have broken away from the spell and that there's a possibility that they're going to lose yet again. They realize that there's only one tactic left to do, and Zed and Rita are to X their staffs together to eventually make their monster grow. So, Zordon and Alpha at the command center are putting their device in motion. And so the next thing we see is that the youth center, if Aisha is to have gone on and broken all of the Rangers and now have their hate go away, the next thing we see is both Bulk and Skull, and their spell of hate is to be broken also. And they start talking about how they love one another, and it's weird. So the Rangers all go on and they find out that their communicators go off. And Aisha goes on and accepts the call, and so Alpha goes on and welcomes back the Rangers, and it's time for them to morph into action because, of course, they have to face off against the Hate Master. So the Rangers all quickly call upon their Zords, and this fight is kind of much more unique than all the others. We kind of find one by one that all of the Zords start to do certain individual attacks, and I thought that was really cool. Compared to all the other fights where we would go on and just see them get in the Ninja Megazord and figure out a way to just punch and and fly down their way into doing some big attack and then calling it a day. They end up finally kind of breaking away and kind of doing all these smaller attacks, which is kind of nice as a different approach finally. So Adam goes on and he starts his attack. So in the movie, Adam goes on and just has this really long tongue that comes out and grabs the monster by the end of the movie. In this thing here, this episode, we have the toad's mouth that just opens. Then all of a sudden, all these much more smaller toads all come out of it, and all the toads start jumping on to uh, Hate Master and start electrifying him and start taking him down. Follow that up by Tommy calling out for Titanus, as now we end up restocking footage from MMPR. So next up, we see Rocky, who ends up calling for an attack for his Zord, where the Zord ends up kind of using this like blade attack. Next up, we see that Tommy ends up using his attack, and it's kind of interesting how the Falcon Zord ends up doing a very much attack similar to the Dragon Zord. How the Dragon Zord had those missiles coming out of its fingers, where the Falcon Zord then ends up using missiles coming out of its wings, which I was like, man, that is kind of cool how that kind of perfectly is matched up together. Or Tommy ends up going on and getting the same exact Ranger suit that has that same kind of similar attack of Zord, which is kind of interesting. So next after that, we have Billy, Aisha, and Kimberly that all gets in the mix, and they do these blast attacks. So shortly thereafter that, we have Titanus that comes in, and they bring it all together. They do the Ultra Zord attack, and they end up taking out. No, wait. No, I think after all the attacks, I don't think they do the Ultra Zord. I think after that they end up taking down the Hate Master after that. So and Tommy ends up saying how they finished him. So at this point, Rita and Zed are now defeated, and we have Zed who's just like writhing on the floor bizarrely. It's like he's humping the floor. It's weird. I guess at this point, like, the two characters have gone on to do so freaking much on this show. As far as them just kind of being upset, like what is really left to do. So Zed at this point is just now on the ground, and he's just flopping around like a dead fish, and it's weird. But I guess it works. So Aisha goes on to meet with the rest of her friends at the youth center to reveal that Veronica, the girl who had gone on to put that club together, going to the club. I gotta say that in that cringe manner, but it's funny to me. So Aisha goes on to say that Veronica had been found out by other people to be the one who is to only let people in the club based on their financials. So Veronica is to go on and end up getting kicked out of that club, and there is to be a new person that is to be a part of the club now that is going on and choosing certain people, and it seems that Aisha is to now be a person that this club is eyeing to want to be having her involved in. And so Aisha goes on and reveals that to Kimberly and hopes that Kimberly is want to join the club also. You would honestly think with these characters, they would probably try to avoid as much as possible to have too many other activities going on, because really, like, chaos could happen at any moment. A monster could happen at any moment. So you would think that, like, these people probably try to avoid to have extracurricular activities, but I guess that's just me. So because they know that it's going to get thrown a wrench in because of some monster or some kind of something going on. Anyways, so after Aisha and Kimberly talk about that whole club thing in the club, uh, we then have both Bulk and Skull who are to figure out the identity of the graffiti bandit, and they are to reveal it as if they're revealing some weird Golden Globe Oscar award thing. And so they open this envelope and they pull it out, and it's none other than Skull is to be the one who was to have been the graffiti bandit, which was stupid. Skull goes on to eventually admit that he must be sleepwalking graffitiing again, and so Ernie goes on and tells both Bulk and Skull that they're going to take buckets and then they're going to go and clean the graffiti. And shortly thereafter, that Adam goes on and turns to Tommy and it's like, well, "Yeah, I'm sorry about how I treated you before." And Aisha's like, "Well, yeah, like we were all uh, definitely on something, but hey, it's all kind of stopped now." And they all put their hands in, they all put their hands together, and they like, "Yeah," like as always. And that's how they kind of end the episode. So, put hands together. Can't stop putting our hands together. So now we're on the final face off uh, episode. Man, 46 minutes and I'm into the second episode. This is actually pretty good timing. I had gone on to already technically start to do a good chunk of this review, and then all of a sudden the video was 8 of footage. All of a sudden the tablet just stopped, and when I go on and I realize that happens, yeah, I just realized I lost all this footage. I'm like, like this sucks. So hopefully I won't go on, and hopefully I won't lose this footage. Uh, so that way I can just put this out. Hopefully. So, we get into the second episode, if I can freaking, there we go. Oh, no, wait, not yet. Let me pause there for a second. All right, episode 14. We make our way into the Angel Grove Museum. This is to be the ancient Kamala culture special exhibit. We find out that most of the Rangers, with the exclusion of Kimberly, have made their way to this museum because they had this class report. And the reason why they write off Kimberly here is because they say that Kimberly had went to the museum on another day. When you kind of think about it, yeah, like we can go on and feasibly say that sometimes certain other Rangers kind of know about things before ahead of time, and plus also like there were certain times when I would go on and I would watch movies in school and I'd already seen the movie. So I would go on and I would tell the teacher that I don't ever really need to see the films, and so they're like, "Well, wait a minute, like you've seen this movie before?" I'm like, "Yeah," like, and I recounted to them exactly what was going on in the film, and like, "Oh, okay, so you don't even need to see this film." I'm like, "Yeah, I've already seen it before." And I would fill out all the paperwork like ahead of time and just be done. And I would just hand them the paperwork. There was a lot of times there were some videos uh, that I just kind of fell asleep to because they were so boring. Some of them, or there was obviously certain movies I'd already seen before, so I would just kind of take a nap because I would have nothing better to do. Because I'd already watched the film, so it's like, okay, I'll just sleep during this time period. So, and then sometimes like they wouldn't finish the movie in one day because of how long it is. So I'm like, okay, I'll just take 2 days and I'll sleep during two classes because I already did the paperwork fairly easy. Anyways, so pushing on. So the Rangers had also written off Kimberly because she's doing some just gymnastics competition also, and that's why she went to the museum in a different day. So the Rangers all make their way on the weekend to make their way into this museum, and Bulk and Skull have made their way to the museum also. Skull goes on and mentions like, "Well, hey man, like, why are we in the museum on the weekend? We're missing the cartoons." Man, I love how that is honestly very consistent for them. How they're always just kind of asking about the cartoons, because I would go on and see another episode so early where they would go on and just be watching cartoons and they'd just be memorized by it. So Bulk states to Skull the only reason why they're there is because they have to get a good grade in their class to kind of bump up their grade, or otherwise they won't be able to stay as police officers and they won't be able to get babes from wearing these uniforms. And let's see how often where they were to have gone on and actually to have gotten seemingly women at this point while wearing these costumes, while wearing these outfits, uniforms. Doesn't seem to really be happening, except for the time where I am to go on and see at the ball, where Bulk seems to have somebody that he's dancing with. Uh, Not quite sure who that person is, but it seems to have happened. Pushing on here. So the Rangers eventually go on to make their way to an exhibit that has these masks around it and an urn. Eventually, there is to be a guide there, a Xena that goes on to explain to the Rangers about this exhibit. Going on to mention about the face stealer, the legend of him, and that the people have been terrorized, that if anything, the face stealer arrives upon once a year on the day of the fourth full moon, and that coincidentally seems to coincide with what's going on actually within present day. So Azina and Billy are kind of filling in the gaps of information of this face stealer character, of the legend of it. And at some point, both Bulk and Skull are trying to make fun of the face stealer character. They go on and mention the whole thing of the face stealer is that actually this entity would go on and actually steal the faces of people. And some of the Rangers are not, or some, either Bulk and Skull or some of the Rangers are not exactly quite bought into this whole legend. But if anything, Azino also mentions about how people had gone on to beat the face stealer in the past by going on and wearing these very specific masks that are uh, to be presented at the exhibit, and they were all warriors who had gone on to beat the face stealer in the past. So, kind of foreshadowing what exactly the Power Rangers are going to exactly have to do to have to beat this face stealer is to kind of recreate this battle from the past. So, Rita thinks that this kind of legend is a good idea to use as a monster for this episode. Zed goes on is to think that this legend is some kind of joke and that he's going to go on and sell her some crater on the dark side of the moon for cheap. And then he walks away. Rita mentions how she's going to unearth this monster and is going to make the Power Rangers into walking zombies. And so the next thing we see is Rita looking through the telescope, and Rito ends up getting in front of the lens. Rita ends up telling Rito to go onto Earth and go into the museum and steal the urn and bring it back to her. So he does. Rito, Babu, and Squat make their way to the museum, and the Rangers are to be driving with this car. So this is now the second time we've gone on to see the Rangers driving in a car now, because the only time before this would be the Rad Bug. So unless there is some other occurrence, oh no, wait. In the Tickle Sneezer episode, we had both Billy and Trini, who is also driving in a car. So, third occurrence, you could probably go on and probably say that there are certain times where the Rangers have probably been driven by someone in a car, but that doesn't really count. But anyways, so or let me know in the comments below if there's any other occasions where the Rangers have driven somewhere um, within the season so far, and I didn't think about it. So as Rocky and Rangers get out of the car, uh, eventually Tommy calls upon the ninja powers and faces off against Rito and Baboon Squat. Rito finds alongside him that the Tengu warriors are to appear, so to kind of even things up. We have a one point where like Tommy is like flipping all over the goddamn place. Tommy goes on and he even like he kind of jumps onto this like flagpole and like continues to do all these kind of weird flips. So we have at this point where Rocky is facing off against his Tengu warrior and he does the teleport trick, like all the other ninja Rangers go on, they do. So while the Rangers are all getting distracted by the Tengu warriors, Rito, Babu, and Squat go into the museum to obtain the urn because there is no security in this museum, and Azina will go on and make light of that in the later half of this episode when eventually she meets up with the team again, with the kids again. So we now have something different going on here. We come to find that both Aisha and Billy are working together to face off against some Tangas. There's a point here where the Tangas are bringing their wings up, and Aisha goes on and puts her hands up, and then Billy grabs Aisha's waist and like flips her. I think that is an interesting attack, but also it's kind of like, okay, that just looked kind of weird. But I guess it was just something for them to try upon the show. So Rito, Babu, and Squat go on to realize that there are people coming in the museum. So their plan is to go on and hide. Wouldn't they just teleport out? Because immediately once the kids walk away, they teleport anyways. But so the kids all arrive, and then all of a sudden we see Rito, a extinct ape, and Babu and Squad, and they're holding signs that says rare specimen or out of order, which makes no sense. Uh, so the kids all make fun of how ugly certain species of monster were in the past, and Rito, Spot takes offense with it, and so he's talking to Babu, and Babu tells him to shush. And shortly after the kids pass, Rito, Babu, and Squat teleport out of there. Adam faces off against a Tengu warrior and loses all of his ninja warrior clothes. It won't matter because eventually all the ninja warriors will regain again, regroup again, and then eventually have all defeated the tank warriors at this point. The Rangers kind of whip away their ninja clothes to then go into the museum to figure out what had happened. The team makes their way to Azina to come to find out that the urn is gone. The Rangers are hoping that they can figure out some kind of clues to figure out uh, what had happened, and is willing to hope that they can try to figure out how to get back the urn to help out Azina in the museum. So Rito makes his way back to the Moon Palace, and he now has the urn. We have Rita that goes on and takes the urn from Rito and uses her wand to eventually have uh, a beam being put onto the urn to then have the urn turn into uh, or to unleash uh, the face stealer. The face stealer goes on to arrive, and then all of a sudden Zed is to be curious of who this monster is. The face stealer goes on and explains that he is the face stealer and that he has slept for 5,000 years. And Zed ends making a joke about, like, well, hey, for some people, that would be for a long time, but for me, I'd probably consider it a nap. Kind of a very funny joke here. So now we have the Rangers making their way to the command center. They end up talking to Zordon that there's a possibility that Zed and Rita had gone on to unlock the spirit of the Face Stealer. And the Rangers are consistently asking whether or not that the legend of this thing could really be true. Adam goes on to mention how today is the fourth full moon of the year, and that there's a possibility that the Face Stealer will appear because it is that specific date. The next thing they see is the alarms going off and them needing to check out the viewing globe. The Face Stealer is starting to run amok upon Angel Grove. And so the Rangers then turn to Zordon and ask if there's a possibility if this monster really can steal faces. And Zordon alerts the Rangers that this monster is very dangerous, but if anything, they will have the ally of Titanus to be able to defeat him this time around. Because they're going to go on and do the Ninja Ultra Zord, which is goofy and weird looking and very cheap. But it is what it is with this show. So Tommy is to go on like, okay, Zordon, all right, like let's go on and let's say that it's about that time yet again. It's morphing time. So the Rangers all morph into action and they face off against the Face Stealer. All of a sudden, we have both Bulk and Skull who have been alerted that there has been a trouble in the park, and they think that they should step into action. But then all of a sudden, they notice the Power Ranger there, and like, wait a minute, maybe they should take over instead of us. So now that Face Stealer is to go on to be very much focused or distracted with Bulk and Skull, if Face Stealer goes on and uses a beam coming from out of its mouth to then relieve both Bulk and Skull of their faces. Bulk and Skull are to go on and be kind of touching their gone face, and Skull is trying to figure out what the heck to do. And so the Rangers are to now realize that the legend of the Face Stealer is to be true, that he can go on and actually steal faces. So the Rangers try to do their best to combat this foe. Tommy goes on and does this punch as Rocky does this kick at the same simultaneous time. Both the effects do nothing, forcing both Tommy and Rocky to kind of flip back. Face Stealer starts to go on and combat all the Rangers, goes after Kimberly, Aisha, and Adam lastly. As now Adam is to be the face stealer's focus, we now have the face stealer that uses a beam and starts to have Adam's suit start to spark. It's been a while since I've seen any sparking going on, and it's kind of interesting to see it here. So, shortly thereafter, Adam is to realize that his face is to start to get removed. And he's like, "Oh, like I can't really breathe." Is what he's like looking like he's doing here. We have all of a sudden where Aisha is to realize that Adam's in trouble, and Aisha is to rush to Adam's evade or to help him out. So as Aisha goes on and she does that, she ends up getting the same beam as, of course, Adam did, and she goes on to herself, lose her face, and fall to the ground. We have to assume because all we see is helmet. So the Rangers now have to go on and grab both Adam and both Aisha and carry them off and retreat back to the command center. So as the team makes their way back to the command center and opens up the helmets of both Adam and Aisha, they find out that their faces are completely gone. Didn't they notice Broken Skulls was as well? Billy at some point does go on and mention to Zordon that both Bulk and Skull have lost their faces as well. And I honestly think that Bulk and Skull should have actually have been at the command center, but I guess it's just like, well, hey, uh, if anything, we're just gonna focus on Adam and Aisha now. It's kind of like the whole when Tommy would go on was going on to be kidnapped and all these other things. They would not focus on Tommy. They would focus on like, no, you got to focus on the monster. You got to focus on certain tasks instead of focusing on saving Tommy. So the Rangers are to be averted to the viewing globe. The face stealers to go on and continue to wreak havoc on Angel Grove. I don't know why my nose is just so itchy right now. So Zordon is to alert the Rangers that if they go out yet again, that they need to figure out a way to protect themselves from Face Stealer's spell, so that way they won't go on and be afflicted by that, like how Adam and Aisha had gone on to be. So Billy is trying to churn in his brain if they could figure out some kind of weakness of the face monster. And from memory of which that he'd gone on to talk to Azina before, he's like, you know what, there's something probably there that could give us some kind of leg up. So both Billy and Zordon are trying to brainstorm here and come up with some kind of possible weakness, and Billy figures it out. Billy turns to Alpha and tells Alpha that Alpha needs to go on and kind of take care of Adam and Aisha while him and the Rangers make their way back to the museum. Billy doesn't go on and exactly clue the Rangers in of what they're looking for, but Billy goes on with the rest of the Rangers to go back to the museum and eventually tells them they need to borrow those masks because that is going to be their one saving grace. So the Rangers make their way to the museum and to Azina and eventually explain to her that they need to borrow the masks. Azina goes on to explain who she is and everything like that, and allows the Rangers to take the masks. And Azina, it seems, is trusting the Power Rangers enough to just let them take it. Tommy alerts Azina that they will bring the masks back as well as the urn, and then teleports out of there. The Face Stealer goes on to meet the Rangers with their backs turned against him. The Rangers, one by one, start to turn, and we now see a completely different thing in front of every one of these Power Rangers helmets. We start to see a mask just like this. One by one, we start to see Rocky, Kimberly, Tommy, and Billy's faces, and they're all to mostly have matching color coded masks with the exclusion of Billy, who his mask is to just have a green one on it instead of blue. So we have the Rangers that are to go on and realize that they're going to be able to beat this monster, and are sounding pretty confident. And so Face Stealer does go on and eventually blasts this beam from out of its mouth, and both Tommy and Rocky put their masks over their helmets, and the beam actually reflects back onto the Face Stealer. And all of a sudden, we'd start to find that the faces that Face Stealer had stolen is to all just start to appear above the Face Stealer's monsterish body, realizing that the Rangers are going to be able to kind of get both Adam and Aisha back here soon so they can defeat this monster. And I guess that was a really good strategy for them to go on and use that whole mask thing, because it deflected the beam and it ricocheted back onto, of course, the Face Stealer. So Adam and Aisha, now at the command center, they're a little confused. They're kind of disoriented. The last thing they remember is that they were fighting with the Face Stealer, and now they're here. Eventually, Alpha and Zordon are to tell both Adam and Aisha that there's more pressing matters, that they need to make their way back to the rest of the team, because they need to call upon their Zords and also call upon the Ultra Zord. As also further, Rita and Zed are to bring their staffs together in X form to have their monster grow. Face Stealer grows ever so big, and now the Rangers are having to dodge the Face Stealer. The Rangers all regroup and all gather together, all six of them, and they all put their hands in and they call for their Zords one by one. The Ninja Zords all end up getting collectively into the Ninja Megazord, and it's kind of funny how the Face Stealer is like, "Oh yeah, nice Zords. Oh, so what? Who cares?" So the Ninja Megazord goes on and connects with the Falcon Zord, and they end up doing that big swinging kick, and then shortly thereafter that they end up doing the two fists from the sky, the Superman attack. You see the wolf fist, you see the ape fist. So the next thing we see is Zed end up getting so upset, and like lightning is kind of just coming from his body. He ends up taking the urn and he ends up throwing it onto Earth's surface. And as the Megazord goes on and takes out Face Stealer, as soon as they get into the Ultra Zord and completely wipe him out, Phase Stealer goes back into the urn, and the Rangers, after leaving their Zord, or Megazord, they run their way to the urn to then put a lid onto the urn and thrust their fists into victory. Rita and Zed, of course, are upset again, explaining how it's to go and be like, okay, this is the same normal thing that always turns out the same way. So Rita and Zed go on and they do the same old puns where Rita ends up calling Zed a radiator face and just kind of walks off and just being upset. The next thing we see is both Bulk and Skull, right at the entrance of the museum. They notice that the Rangers are making their way with these masks and urns, or with this mask and urn, to return it back to the museum. Bulk and Skull are wanting to go on and take this urn and masks from them, so that way they can get credit for finding these things. So the Rangers are kind of questioning at first, but they're like, oh no, yeah, we'll just give it to them and they'll bring these in. And immediately after that, the Power Rangers teleport away after that. Bulk and Skull make their way into the museum to hand over the urn and the masks. And we now have museum security guards that go on and grab both Bulk and Skull and arrest them. I guess these security guards don't realize that Bulk and Skull are to be police officers or anything of that nature. So, or they don't really care. They're just going to go on and arrest these guys anyways. So, as Bulk and Skull are getting hauled off, we end up seeing again the special exhibit of the ancient Kamala culture sign. The next thing we see is Azina making her way to the youth center, uh, thanking the kids for their concern of the masks and of the urn. Azina is to mention how she will up security in the future to hope that nothing of like this happens again. And Kimberly ends up telling the rest of the Rangers that it's kind of nice to learn about other cultures. And eventually this kind of credit rolls us out here. Even though Kimberly wasn't even in the museum in this episode to learn about any culture because she had already went to the museum on some other day. So, cut to the Potion Notion episode with Mischief. So we begin this episode with Kimberly and Kimberly and Tommy being very lovey-dovey at the Angel Grove High. Bulk and Skull notices both Tommy and Kimberly and say, hey, like, how about you go on and look like a good couple at this ball that we're having because we're selling these raffles or we're selling these tickets to this ball. Or like, hey, wouldn't you guys like to go? Tommy and Kimberly are kind of back and forth questioning it, but they realize that they kind of give in and they want to go to this ball. Rita and Zed go on at the Moon Palace, and since Rita is finding out that Tommy is taking Kimberly to this ball, Rita is upset because Zed never takes her anywhere. So Rita wants Zed to take her on another honeymoon, and Zed is to say, it's like, well, hey, I've already wanted to put together a surprise. I wanted to go on and I wanted to put you on Serpentera, and since Serpentera is supposedly now fully charged, you and I can go on and escape, and we can leave together. And Zed goes on and is to explain like who's going to eventually go on and be in charge while they're away, and eventually Rito thinks that he could be in charge, and Zed is looking at him like, you be in charge? Like, so Zed goes on and tells Rito, it's like, well, hey, if you can go on and if you can tell Finster to get this monster ready, then. So Rito goes on and makes his way to Finster, and Finster is talking about how this very specific monster is to connect with a love potion. A love potion that is to be ever so similar to the exact same love potion that Rita had given Zed. For some reason, Finster is just letting this just fly out of his mouth uh, for some odd reason. So Rito is taking this bit of information of like, oh, Rita had put a love potion on Zed, huh? So Rito is to ask Finster where exactly this love potion is, and Finster is like, well, hey, I have it in this locked up cabinet. And Rito gets ever so impatient that he unlocks the cabinet and takes the love potion for himself. Rito immediately takes his love potion and is to want to try it out to see if it actually works. Rito goes on and takes this love potion and sprays it on Mischief. And Mischief is a female monster, so Mischief wakes up and wants to do whatever Rito tells her to do. So, of course, Rito is to whisper sweet nothings uh, into Mischief, and so she does whatever he says. The next thing we see is Mischief is invisible, walking around Angel Grove High for some reason. I don't know why, but she just is. So, Mischief starts to try to figure out what person she's going to use this love potion on, and immediately she sees Kimberly and Tommy together. Mischief goes on and uses the love potion as Kimberly turns, and instead of Kimberly going on and looking right into Tommy, she instead looks into Skull. Kimberly says how Skull's the cutest thing, and further starts calling him handsome and all kinds of things. And eventually, Kimberly's to ask Skull if he has a date for the ball. Tommy is to just kind of be distraught and just like, oh, what's going on here? Like, what are they talking about? So Tommy even like thrusts in between them, and Tommy says to Kimberly, it's like, well, hey, I thought you and I were going to the ball together. And eventually, further, like Skull just pushes Tommy aside, grabs Kimberly, and gives her a big old like dance dip. If you guys don't know what a dance dip is, like when you would go on and you kind of do like this normal dancing, at some point you do this like dip, where eventually at some points, like a dip is kind of dangerous to do, because sometimes somebody could accidentally like drop somebody. Yeah. Uh, but if anything, that's kind of also the goofy fun of it also. But anyways, so cut to Lieutenant Stone making his way into Mrs. Appleby's class, trying to figure out exactly where Bulk and Skull are, as Bulk and Skull are still trying to sell these raffle tickets, or these tickets for the bell, whatever this is. So Lieutenant Stone is talking to Miss Appleby as Mischief goes on and uses this love potion on Lieutenant Stone. Lieutenant Stone goes on to see Miss Appleby and is to say my stripes. I was like, okay, all right. So Stone ends up saying to Mrs. Appleby how beautiful her eyes are, and Mrs. Appleby like grabs Stone away, like, I beg your pardon. Uh, so Stone ends up mentioning about the police patrol ball, and if Appleby will go with him. And it seems that Mrs. Appleby is not willing to give Stone an answer. Cut to, we now have Bulk and Skull that are still outside class trying to sell more tickets. All of a sudden, we have Mischief that ends up using more of the love potion. You would honestly think that for this episode, that they wouldn't have to just perfectly line it up to where it'd be guy and girl every single time. But I guess for the time period, I guess they would have to do stuff like that. Like if they were probably to do it in more modern times, it'd probably be guy guy, girl girl for some things also, just to more modernize it. But anyways, pushing on here. So Bulk ends up being put under the love spell, and the first person that eventually he notices besides Skull is to be Aisha. Bulk ends up saying to Aisha where she been, that they're gonna go to some Casbah, whatever that is, but they're gonna go there. Uh, and Aisha is just kind of like, oh, what's wrong with you? So now to the Moon Palace. Goldar, and here's the interesting thing about this very specific episode. We come to find out that Goldar has many different faces, that they keep changing so consistently. It's kind of annoying at this point, how inaccurate it is or how goofy it is. But yeah, like we get kind of like the Goldar that I think a lot of more people like, this kind of way of Goldar looking. But then also they get into the more other horrified Goldar looking face. And I'm just like, why make these choices? Like, is it just the fact, like why is it that Goldar has to look so differently at some points? Like, does it depend on Sentai footage? Like, are they recycling Sentai footage at some point? Like, what's going on here? I'm so confused of why Goldar has to consistently look so horrifically different. I'm just like, why? Why make that choice? So, and if anything, why in one specific episode make it so consistently different choices? So, Golar is hoping that he will win Zed over while he's talking to Babu and Squad. And we now have all the Rangers and they're at the park asking if there's anything different going on in town. All of a sudden, we notice the only thing different is that Kimberly is seemingly so infatuatingly in love with Skull, going on and saying that she is colored guilty with how much in love she is with Skull. So the Rangers all get a communicator beep, and all of a sudden, both Goldar and Tengu's arrive. Kimberly goes on to realize the only thing that she's concerned about is that Skull could possibly be endangered now that monsters have arrived, and she needs to figure out where Skull is so she can protect him, which I think was hilarious. So, shortly thereafter that, the Rangers all like, oh, whatever Kimberly said, let's go into our ninja powers. And so, the Rangers all shift into their ninja powers, and they focus more so on the fighting. We don't really have, I don't think, much of Kimberly that is to be distracted here. Like I think she does play along with all the fighting, which kind of sucks because they could have really done something fun here, but it is what it is. So Rocky and Tommy focus more so, I believe, on Goldar, as the rest of the Rangers they go on and they focus on the Tengas. It seems that there is some kind of bridge that they end up using to try and fight the Tengas here. We immediately have, besides like Billy being in this kind of similar location, We have Kimberly that goes on and kind of uses these pieces of wood against this bridge to go on and kind of have this Tengu kind of flipping over this bridge and falling out or falling off, which is kind of a kind of fun comedic bit. We have Adam and Aisha kind of working together here to take out some of the Tengas, and then we see Tommy kind of jumping off of Rocky to then face off with Golar. Eventually, Golar at some point eats dirt, and then we cut to both Zed and Rita. Both Zed and Rita are to slowly but surely realize once they start to get things going here that they're going to get to a quick stopping gap. Zed is to eventually realize that there isn't enough energy in Serpentera for them to go on to their full honeymoon. Because, of course, Rito did not go on and charge up the Serpentera like Zed asked him to. Honestly, with Rito being very forgetful or to be a person that doesn't really remember anything or retain things, I would not go on and trust Rito with anything. But it seems that these people try to go on and entrust him with so much. So, Zed goes on to eventually give Rito a good old jingle jingle. And so, Rito goes on and picks this up. And so Zed goes on and explains about the whole, like the Serpentera not being charged and that they're coming back. And if anything, Zed tells Rito that Goldar should be preparing this monster to go out onto the field as soon as they get back, is the plan. So that was a whole wasted amount of time of Serpentera for nothing to happen from it, because of course we don't have much happening from Serpentera. So back with the Ninjettis and Goldar and the Tengas. Goldar and Tengas realize that they have been beaten at this point, so at this point they're just going to leave. Telling them, next time, Rangers, next time. The Rangers all make their way back to the command center, and here's where they point out that Kimberly has something going wrong with her, that she's acting unlike herself. So Alpha goes on and gives Kimberly a good old scan, and Kimberly is to be twiddling her hair and be talking about Skulovich. So, for all the times that we would go on and see Kimberly as a different person or have a spell being put on her, because that happens ever so often, it is kind of interesting that Kimberly here is to act very much differently than she ever has in the past. Like, I have not gone on and seen Kimberly kind of just twiddle her hair and do what she's doing here, which is kind of, it's really interesting to see the range of Amy Jo Johnson and how many times she goes on and is to completely give you a different person every single time instead of just the same old, which is kind of nice. She's really changing it up every single time. So, as the Rangers are to be averted to the viewing globe, to find out that Mischief is going on and using more love potion on more people. We have Kimberly that's going on and being really weird and very awkward and like hugging onto Aisha and all kinds of weird stuff to Aisha's just going like, okay, like this, like Aisha, Kimberly's getting really weird. So it's almost kind of like Kimberly is kind of drunk in a way. So Zordon is alerting the Rangers to kind of don't underestimate Mischief. And I keep saying Mischief. It's more like Mischief. Mischief, but I'm gonna butcher it every time. Kind of like I'll probably butcher all these names of these monsters. I apologize. But if anything, let's get rolling here. So the Rangers end up turning back to Zordon and asking if there's a possibility that Zordon can figure out a way to cure Kimberly. And Zordon answers that with like, well, like I don't think it's quite that easy. Like if anything, uh, like we're kind of messing with Kimberly's molecular balance or whatever. So he says in a way that's very technical, of which that I can't exactly replicate. But Zordon basically says that they need to let this kind of just spell kind of go through Kimberly's system and hope that either she could break it or maybe at some point it'll just wear off in time. So, and it's kind of interesting to just see Tommy just so crushed in this episode. It's kind of fun, sadly enough, to just see like just Tommy tortured by the fact that Kimberly's in love with some other man that's not him. Uh, it's horrible to say that, but freaking, I gotta get something out of this. I gotta get some kind of like popcorn and like, yeah. Let's just see Tommy horribly tortured. So, Zordon goes on and tells the Rangers to keep Kimberly on a very close watch because, if anything, like we gotta basically save her from herself. So, the Rangers teleport out, and the next thing we see is Goldar just beating up Rito here. And eventually, Goldar, with different face, I gotta bring it up every time. I gotta. This episode is horrible with that. So, Goldar beats up Rito to eventually have it be revealed uh, about how Rita had gone on and used a love potion on Zed. To where Goldar, with, yeah, this thing, he goes on to be like, well, I should have known it was a trick. I'll take care of that. And so Goldar calls out for Finster and ends up telling Finster forcibly to create an antidote. Again, with a completely different, this one. So, cut to the Angel Grove High. We all of a sudden have Mr. Kaplan and Mrs. Appleby. If you guys don't know who Mr. Kaplan is, he's the principal. Mr. Kaplan goes on to be talking to Miss Appleby, and Miss Chief is to be making her way with the love potion. Miss Chief uses the love potion on Mr. Kaplan, and Mr. Kaplan is all of a sudden kissing on Mrs. Appleby's hand, saying that she will be his. And I'm sorry, dude, but your toupee isn't doing you any favors. I'm sure it's a delicious toupee. What am I talking about? I don't have the best set of hair either, but still. At least I'm never gonna go on. Well, I've had a couple of wigs in my time of being on this channel. I will admit that. Like I will admit that yeah, there has been times where I've really been trying to figure out ways to like, hey, well, if I maybe lose my hair, what am I gonna do? But I haven't come to that situation exactly yet, where I'm like gonna go on and and want to just have a toupee for the rest of my life. But hey, like I don't knock anybody who anywhere in the part of the world does it either, or does any other kind of way of which to keep their hair. But anyway, so if anything, I'm fine if I lose all mine. Like I've shaved my head completely bald. I don't know how many times, so I'm fine with it. Anyways, let's move on. Shaming a two-bait man. I'm sorry. So Mr. Kaplan confesses him being love struck, and Mrs. Appleby goes on this. Has everyone in the school gone mad? Just hilarious. And so Mr. Kaplan responds like, "Mad with love, uh, Mrs. Appleby of my eye." So now cut to Goldar, Rito, and Finster. Goldar goes on to talk to Finster and states to Finster that they have to test out the antidote before giving it to Lord Zed. So, if anything, Finster is going to go on and kind of reverse anything that Miss Chief had gone on to do of Love Spell. Finster is going to be the one to reverse it all. So, Finster is also going to be invincible like Miss Chief was, and kind of reverse things. So, the next thing we see is Finster making his way back to Angel Grove High, telling Miss Chief to make her way back to the Moon Palace. And so Fencer goes on and sees Mr. Kaplan and Stone fighting over Miss Appleby, and Miss Appleby's like, "Yeah, like let's see this fight, and let's see these people duke it out." So Fencer ends up using the antidote on both Stone and Kaplan, and instead of them going to fisticuffs, they shake hands as if they've never met before. And I thought that was funny. So shortly thereafter that, we find that Bulk is with Aisha, trying to win her over with romantic nothings. And so Finster ends up using the antidote on Bulk, and Bulk is going to say, "I'll bring you to the moon and the stars, but not today." And Aisha's like, "Well, thank God." Like, it's nice talking to you. Bye bye. And her face just completely sells it. So now we have Skull and Kimberly together, which is just this is this is the real heartbreaker, because when immediately Fencer goes on and breaks the spell of Kimberly, Kimberly runs away from Skull and then immediately grabs onto Tommy, and Kimberly ends up asking Tommy, it's like, "What was I doing with Skull?" So Kimberly's like, "Well, yeah, we really need to get the others. We need to bring everybody back together, and like, because just something else is just kind of going on here." So Mischief, Finster, Rito, and Goldar are now at the palace, and Rita has to also to be entering soon. So Rito whispers sweet nothings to Mischief, and eventually what happens next as Rita is to start to be talking to Goldar, the love potion is to be sprayed into Rita's face. Rita all of a sudden starts running after Goldar as he makes his way to Zed's throne, and uh, Rita ends up getting on top of Goldar, on top of the throne, and Goldar is screaming to Finster, "Antidote, get the antidote, Finster, get the antidote." So Finster does go on and do the antidote to Rita, and Goldar could never be happier to have Rita, who has stopped falling for him. So as soon as Rita gets away and Goldar walks off, Zed goes on like, "Hey Goldar, you got the monster, all right." Like, brownie points for you. So if anything, both Zed and Rita, like, they're not quite upset. At least the monster is there, and so, like, okay, like, let's execute the next part of this plan then, since we're back. So Rita was kind of like, whew, like, at least he didn't get too much chewed out here. So the Rangers all make their way back together within the high school, and they state how this time around, this specific thing that they have gone on and done has got to be the weirdest thing that they've probably ever done. And yeah, I think this one is probably the weirdest out of everything. Maybe I have to go on and kind of maybe backpedal and kind of double check on things. But yeah, I think uh, this exact spell is probably the weirdest thing that they probably, well, I don't know. There's probably been a number of times where there's some weird shit going on. Uh, if anything, you'd have to go through every one of my reviews so far, and 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 find which ones that I said were weird episodes, and clear consensus on which one is weirder by me saying that. But someone would really have to take that due diligence and time. Anyways, so as the Rangers gathered together, Zordon ended up calling Tommy for the Rangers to make their way to the command center. Oh no, wait. Zordon ends up telling Tommy of Mischief to have made its way to the park, and so the Rangers have to go on and have to morph to get to the park to then face off against Mischief. Mischief, instead of having the love potion on Mischief, instead Mischief is to have this kind of weird. It looks like a spider web shield, and Mischief uses this weapon quite a bit against the Rangers here. And eventually, it has finally Tommy whip out his Saba sword because it's been such a long time since he's used it, and have him kind of use the sword against the shield, which was kind of cool to see. So, as Mischief starts to take out some of the Rangers here, we go on to then have Tommy, who whips out his Saba sword yet again to go up against Mischief. And here's where Rita and Zed realize that they're going to X their staves and make their monster grow. Mischief ends up turning gigantic, so the Rangers all call for their Zords in a very interesting and unique like way compared to all the other episodes. So the Ninja Megazord ends up getting put together, and so there actually is a unique fight that's going on for Megazord's sake, because it's really been a while since we've really gone on and done anything really important with Megazord stuff beyond when the Ninja Megazord is to appear and do interesting weapons or interesting attacks, which I'm like, okay, cool, like this is kind of unique. But I think that this fight between the two of these people were kind of different than most others. So Mischief goes on. Mischief. Anyways, so the monster ends up going on to use its shield as a way of like this fireball kind of attack, and the Ninja Megazord ends up taking a hit. Rocky ends up calling out for the Falcon Zord, needing its help for them to combine forces so they can go on and do certain specialty attacks to take out Mischief. So, as Ninja Megazord and Falcon Zord are flying into the air, which, in all honesty, kind of bothers me because, like, if Ninja Megazord is just flying in the air, what do they need the Falcon Zord for? I don't know why they have to both just be flying in the air and then they connect to one another. What is the point of having the combination of both of them if they can seemingly just fly? Because legit, like, the Ninja Megazord has to go on and has to be able to fly on its own to then connect with Falcon Zord, because both of them are way up in the air anyways, so they have to have both fly, right? Maybe we can say that since the crane is attached to the head of the Megazord, that's why they can technically fly, because there's a bird Zord attached to it. So, trying to make sense of it. Uh, so, as we get now Ninja Megazord that has Falcon connect to it, we then go on into the heavy fist combo moves of the Wolf Sword punching and then the Ape Sword punching. Coincidentally, the Megazord is doing these punching attacks without the Falconazord being attached to it. So that makes no sense. So, it's an error. So this attack goes on and takes out Mischief, as thank God I can finally stop saying that now. And now we see the Ninja Megazord with the Falcon wings, and I'm like, oh my god, that actually looks pretty dope. I love that visual, I just do. So Rita and Zed are realizing that yet another monster had bitten the dust. And Goldar is trying to get Finster with the antidote so that way Finster can give Zed the antidote. Zed ends up getting the antidote, and we are thinking that Zed is going to go on and make his way to Rita and do something horrible to her. But Zed goes on and makes his way to Rita and is still treating her nicely and is still treating her like his love. And Rito is to say, oh my god, like, so Zed just really just loves Rita then. And so there is no antidote to cure that. Or we can go on and just say the love spell had just been so ingrained into Zed's DNA that there is no way to antidote it. That could just be a thing. That maybe it just lingered for way too long, and that's my assessment. I don't know if I've said this already, so I'm probably repeating myself. So, but I think that's nice. Like, I think that should have been a thing to end the episode, but they didn't, because they still have the ball to get to. So, we have this ball at the youth center. We start to eventually see one by one people starting to be coupled up here. Adam goes on and he kind of talks about the monster and then he leaves. Billy goes on and asks Aisha if she would like to dance. We see that Rocky in the background is to see some woman where he is to ask her to dance. Stone and Appleby are to go on and go on and like, hey, would you care to dance with me? And Applebee's like that's completely all right, Jerome. I guess Lieutenant Stone's name is his first name Jerome. So maybe that's just a thing of like maybe Lieutenant Stone never had a name, first name until today. So we found out Lieutenant Stone's first name, which is Jerome. So now we have Bulk, who's just dancing with some woman that we don't know who she is. Maybe it was to go on and be either some extra, or maybe it was to be some woman, a part of the people working with the show. I would like to think that it might have been like there was at one point where there was like this other dance episode where there was like a female and there was like a female variation of both Bulk and Skull. And I would like to have thought that it was probably either one of those girls that was dancing with Bulk, but that's just me. Plus, also, it doesn't look like the exact same girl. So, it'd be kind of interesting just to find out for that episode specifically who that girl was. Anyways, so we then see Kimberly and Tommy dancing. And so Kimberly goes on and notices Skull just kind of sitting down at this table. Kimberly tells Tommy, hey, would you mind if I just go over to the Skull and talk to him and maybe have a dance? Tommy doesn't mind. He walks off. What a nice guy Tommy is. Frickin' Tommy is way too goddamn nice. So, and probably it's him being too nice is probably to his own detriment. So, well, like, but no, like, but Tommy's just a good person, and so Kimberly is trying to be a good person too. So Kimberly makes her way to Skull, and Kimberly asks Skull to dance. Skull says, like, well, are you gonna step on my feet like you stepped on my heart? All my powers! My powers of perception. No. So Kimberly really does ask Skull to dance, and the both of them do go on and they do dance, and it's really nice. Kimberly says to Skull that they are friends, that they will be friends. Like, there are some times where Bulk and Skull do right, and there are points uh where the Rangers do want to go on and consider Bulk and Skull their friends. And they do have these nice moments. Even though a lot of times, really, Bulk and Skull really foul that up. But still, Kimberly and Skull go on and they have this dance here. And that ends up ending our episode. So now on to episode 16. I'm dreaming of a White Ranger. So now this is Christmas time, everybody. Merry Christmas, everybody. For those of you that are probably seeing this maybe in December time, probably not. If it ever is to be December time, then Merry Christmas. And also Happy New Year. But if anything, this is kind of well past Christmas. We're kind of a little bit too late to the game on this one. But anyways, let's push on. So, man, I'm like, I have 2 episodes left and we're under 2 hours. Surprising. Shocking how long this is taking, but I think I'm not going into so many tangents this time around, and I'm trying to cut to the quick here. So, and then me talking now is not really helping. But anyways, me mentioning the whole like, hey, I'm cutting to the quick. It's yeah. Anyways, so in the youth center, we come to find that some of the Rangers are making their way into the youth center. We come to find that Aisha and Kimberly. Kimberly is playing a guitar. Aisha is kind of conducting this choir of kids singing these Christmas songs, which I guess is kind of lucky that most of these Christmas songs are kind of publicly owned and you can't copyright them. Because I guess you can't really sing Happy Birthday now, can you? Anyways, so we have the kids and they're all singing this Christmas song. And in the background, we have Ernie and a bunch of other extras all going on and making decorations, all going on and doing some, God, what is it? The glitter. They're doing a lot of stuff with glitter, which I hope a lot of people end up getting blinded after that episode. I'm just joking. So Tommy ends up bringing in this bouquet of roses, and so Aisha and Kimberly meet up with the rest of the Rangers, and they're talking about how the choir sounds really great, and that the kids have been working really hard. And so the next thing we see is Ernie coming into frame. It's nice to see Ernie again. Yeah, Ernie, sweet. So Ernie comes in and he brings Tommy this Christmas tree star. And instead of Tommy just going to the tree and like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna put it up there. How cool is this? No, Tommy takes a moment to just kind of look around. And there is to be one girl that seems to be very sad. So Tommy goes out of his way to talk to this girl, and it's to tell her, hey, like, do you want to go on it? Do you want to put up the star? Because that's the selfless thing about Tommy, that Tommy wants to go on and find a kid and like, yeah, hey, yeah, you go on, you put up the star. Because maybe like if you're not feeling that great, like maybe you putting up the star will make you feel better. Um, that you accomplishing this task instead of just Tommy doing it. So Tommy is eventually speak with Becky, and so both of them make their way to the tree. Of course, Becky's a little short, so because she's just young. Tommy goes on and it's to grab Becky and it's to lift her up so that way she can go on and put the star up. Uh, she's a little young, so you would think that Aisha and Kimberly would be talking about Tommy behind his back, like, "Oh my God, did you see what Tommy just did? Oh my God!" But no. Um, Instead, Aisha and Kimberly are going on and they're talking about how Kimberly is just kind of sad during this time of year because she is kind of just homesick because she misses her mother, which is nice. Because of course, remembering that her parents had gotten divorced, because we have to bring that up again, and that her mother is in Paris, and yeah, just there's no way for Kimberly to be able to see her parents. It's sad, but if anything, Aisha tells Kimberly, it's like, well, hey, we're gonna go on and figure out some way to just make this work, right? Because like we're gonna try to make this the best Christmas we can make it, right? So, but eventually, it's kind of nice by the end of the episode because we find out that Aisha or that Kimberly's mother is to make her way back to see Kimberly by Christmas. I'm like, oh, that's nice. So just wholesome, just good stuff going on in this episode. Even though I didn't want to really grade this episode anywhere of high, I just don't care. So the next thing we see is Bulk and Skull, and they're talking about how there's a party going on at the youth center, and they're going to have to spend it being a reindeer and a Santa Claus. So and how Bulk is going to realize how he's going to have a number of kids being put on his knee, and of course have them all ask what they're going to want for Christmas this year, and it's probably to go on and be fairly annoying. So the next thing we cut to is Kimberly. Kimberly is struggling to put on the mistletoe, and we're thinking like, ooh, like is this going to go on and have Kimberly and Tommy just lip it out, just give it a good old smooching? And I was like, yeah, give me that smooching. Give me that goddamn smooching. It's been so long. It's been so long. So, Kimberly and Tommy here get ever so close, and we're thinking it's going to happen, to then in turn have Skull intervene and kiss Kimberly on the cheek. And then Skull goes on to look at Tommy. He's like, it's like, haha, sucker. So, I absolutely loved that. I thought it was hilarious. So Kimberly and Tommy, they go on and like they're still there, and it's still just like so. Oh, here's a little behind the scenes. So I had gone on and I think had seen this. I think very specific episode. I think I had seen it on a VHS tape, separate from anything else I had seen of Power Rangers. Because luckily my parents were able to get me a VHS tape of Power Rangers, and I had watched this episode and I'm like, whatever the episode is, what it is. Like I really didn't care. So like, yeah, I think my parents just got rid of that VHS tape. Well, I was like, it just wasn't really a good Power Rangers episode. It just really wasn't. Um, but at least they had got me that. So I'm grateful for that. So we come to this very specific episode, I believe, and Jason David Frank had gone on to talk about a Christmas episode during, I think, Power Rangers Playback, or somewhere. and he had mentioned how he didn't think that he was like wasting film or wasting everybody's time or whatever. Like, and Jason David Frank from time to time just likes to joke around. So at one point, there was I think a moment where Kimberly and Tommy both kiss, and Kimberly I think has the line of like, "Well, what could be better than this?" And Jason David Frank as a joke just whips down his pants and and makes that kind of joke. Makes of course a sexual joke. So everybody started to laugh, but then also like it was like, well, hey man, you just wasted film, and now we're gonna have to reshoot this whole thing. So plus also this is supposed to be a Christmas episode, and it's like whatever. So, but hey, yeah, good joke by Jason David Frank, but it just wasted a take. Uh, but if anything, like maybe that footage is somewhere, just somewhere for eventually some blooper reel of some kind to be. Well, probably not that. I'm sure that would now probably end up getting used on some footage somewhere. Uh, but if anybody could figure out where it was, or if it still exists, it probably doesn't exist anywhere. Uh, but anything. Maybe someone will recreate it on in AI. They'll recreate the story by using JDF's voice, because that's what it seems that everybody's doing these days. So we now go down to the lower deck of Moon Palace. We go on to have Zed, who's mentioning about every year for centuries this holiday is to happen, and how he will finally break this tradition, this holiday. Uh, and his plan is to go on and to get into the toy business, and he's going to go on and he is going to make a hypno spin toy that looks very much like a dreidel, and so that's a little bit that's a little kind of insensitive. So Zed goes on and makes a hypno spin and shows it, and it's basically a dreidel. And Rito goes on and starts looking at the hypno spin, and he starts to get into the spin of it all. So Zed goes on and kind of knocks Rito out of it, and then goes on to explain uh, what the plan is. So Zed goes on to explain to Rito that he's going to have to go to the North Pole and is going to have to force Santa and the elves to work on their plan. And so Zed goes on and sends Rito on his merry way. So, and then shortly thereafter, like Zed gets ever so close to the screen. And I thought that was an interesting way to just kind of just cut to that. So make our way back to Aisha and Kimberly, and they're talking about tonight's performance and how good it will be. And so they get all the kids together and they start singing another song that's a Hanukkah song. I honestly like in the future Christmas episodes where they try to blend in all the cultures of all of the holidays instead of just focusing on the Christmas one. But they also have Hanukkah being sung in this episode, but still. More of the focus is much more so on Christmas. Even though I'm to be a person that celebrates Christmas, I still kind of think it's unfair. And I wish that they would have gone on and had all the other holidays kind of just showcased a little bit here, a little bit more. So we have all the kids and they start singing this Hanukkah song. There is to be one person who is notably just to be so sad and just like, whatever, like, just get this song done. I don't give a fuck. And it's Becky. So after this song is done and over with, Aisha is to go on and pull Becky aside and it's to ask her, like, what is your freaking problem, bitch? Like, what is your problem? So Becky goes on and mentions that this party is going to eventually end up sucking because there's no one in her family that is going to go on and see her sing. Yeah, like I would go on and eventually be a kid also, and like I would hope that my parents would go on to all of my band concerts or whatever thing that I was in, but also uh, like I would just go on and just be like, well, like they have things going on, they have jobs, like if anything, oh well, um, like I would just move on. Um, like I wouldn't think that any of my parents would that either one of my parents would go on and to have made their way into any of my football or sports games or whatever I was in at that time either. But my mom would occasionally go to these things, and uh, whenever she wasn't working or uh, whenever she would be able to go to them. Um, or my dad, when eventually he got out of the Navy, yeah, eventually he would go on occasionally to things here and there. So I at least got that. At least I had parents. At least let's go further diving into that. Um, but yeah, but like I didn't want to like force my parents into going into any of these things. Um, because feasibly I was to just go on and uh, just be okay for them to just have their own thing and have their own lives and have whatever. Um, but I can get it probably during a Christmas period of time. It's like, well, hey, you want to have your family there. Uh, but I don't know. Like, I guess that's an introvert or extrovert or whatever. Let's get too much of a tangent in here, why don't we? So, caught to the North Pole. We have Santa going on and talking to his number one elf, or I'm just going to call the elf number one at this point, saying how they're kind of behind schedule, but if anything, there is not much to worry about. All of a sudden, there's to be Rito coming in, and that is a thing to worry about. Rito goes on and introduces himself, and Santa knows exactly who he is and tells him he's very much on the naughty list. Rito goes on and tells Santa that Rito is his new boss, and number one tells Rito, like, hey, do you know who you're messing with? Uh, you can't just push us around and this and that. So Rito ends up calling number one Little Sugar Plum and tells her that she's going to go on and make the toys that he wants her to. And that he is to take Christmas and take it permanently out of business. So, cut to Kimberly making her way to seek out Becky even more. To like, yeah, she had kind of heard her up before, but like Kimberly really wants to go on and have a talking to with Becky, um, to maybe convince Becky that maybe if Becky could just go on and talk to her father, that maybe Becky can convince her father to just make his way uh, to Becky's performance, so that way they can have this time together. Which eventually it turns out really nice because the father is available to be making his way to Becky to see her sing here, and like it is kind of nice how they go on and they present that in this story, even though kind of the dad character is kind of just really awkward throughout the rest of the episode, with just kind of where they put him consistently in here. So, anyways, pushing on. So after Kimberly convinces Becky to talk to her father, because I think Kimberly is the perfect person to talk to any of these people about like just problems with their parents. Because if anything, Kimberly had gone through a divorce with her parents. So if anything, I feel yeah, Kimberly is like the perfect person to talk to any kid about just parent issues, parent problems. So that's kind of nice to have like the perfect person to be put in the right place. So Kimberly gives Becky her jacket and then re-meets up with Tommy. The communicator ends up going off, so the Rangers end up meeting all back by the lockers. Zordon alerts the Rangers that they need to make their way to the command center immediately, so they all teleport there. It actually is all really nice that going from scene to scene, that every single one of their outfits actually does match up. Because there's sometimes where I always get this feeling that they're going to cut from certain scenes and then their outfits are going to be either completely different or not matching. Like it always is kind of nice to see that even in Mighty Morphin, like the outfits do match up. Anyways, like there's not an extra scarf or something goofy like that. So, well, maybe everyone. There is the one time where Tommy did have the green bandana when he should actually be have had of having a white bandana, but I guess that's a goofy little thing, right? So Zordon alerts the Rangers that they're going to have to make their way to the North Pole. That Santa has been captured and the elves have been forced to mass produce Zed's evil Christmas toy. The Rangers go on to ask eventually what this toy could end up being, and it's a brainwashing toy of sorts. So the Rangers are to go on and realize that it's like, okay, well, like we need to make our way to the North Pole. Okay, all right. So Zordon ends up alerting the Rangers that when going to the North Pole, bizarrely, even though North Pole should be a very magical place, evidently it's not magical for the Power Rangers or Rito or Goldar. It cancels itself out for some goofy reason. Zordon goes to explain to the Rangers that once they make their way to the North Pole, that they will not be able to go on and be able to morph or use their ninjetti powers or nothing. And so they just have to strategically just figure out a way to still beat Rito and Goldar without the ability of using their powers. Also, at some point, the Ninja Rangers for Sentai, they had gone on and they had put together a Christmas episode that is so strange and so bizarre that eventually at some point there's this YouTuber called Comic Tropes who went on to do an episode that focuses on this Alien Ranger slash Ninja Ranger weird Christmas episode. And yeah, like that was kind of fun that he had gone on to actually have brought that up. But also, I do really like that channel. Like, if anything, I kind of regained my interest back into kind of looking into certain comic book stuff just because of his videos, because of how much I was kind of out of it for a long time. But it has kind of renewed my interest when eventually I'm to kind of get the financials together to just kind of get some comic books and start collecting again. Collecting again is just kind of at the longest, just smallest rung of whatever. But like I'm kind of thinking about certain items that eventually I might get in the future to finally be able to read and check out. So that's kind of nice. But they're very specific titles, so it's not something I can just kind of go into a common comic book place and just find. But if anyways, I can find them on Temu, so that's nice. So eventually, when I can grind my way to kind of get more of those things. So yeah, you guys didn't know Timu had comic books. Isn't that nice? Anyways, they also have a bunch of Power Rangers clothes and stuff like that. So if you're looking for a diverse amount of wardrobe for Power Ranger stuff, you can probably find them on Temu, and they're very cheap. Uh, even it's probably mostly Sentai stuff more so than Power Ranger stuff, but still, like you can add a number of things to your wardrobe, and that's good enough to me. So moving on here. So God, I'm getting into so many tangents. So Zordon goes on and tells Rangers about how in North Pole their powers won't work, but eventually, hey, go on to North Pole anyways. Best of luck to you. And so the Power Rangers make their way to teleport to the North Pole. As soon as they go on and they make their way to the North Pole, Alpha hopes that they're going to stay warm, as immediately the Rangers start talking about how cold it is at the North Pole. So Tommy makes his way to the opening door of Santa's home and comes to find out that Santa is being tied up, as well as all of the elves are being forced to make this toy or uh, hypno device with the Tangas and Rito coming in the background and commanding these people to do things. So Tommy turns to the rest of the Rangers and says to them, it's like, well, yeah, I guess what Zordon had told us was exactly correct. And so now we have to go on and figure out some plan about how to kind of rescue Santa and these elves. But they can't go about it through the normal way of just like, hey, let's rush in and let's go on to uh, kind of punch and kick our way through all this. No, 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 no. Like, if anything, they're they're worried about Santa and they're worried about the elves being in more danger that way. So if anything, they have to come up with a different way. They have to come up with a different strategy. So Zed realizes that the Rangers have made their way to the North Pole, and so Zed calls upon Goldar to say, "Hey, you need to get down there so that way you can help out Rito, because evidently the Power Rangers are there." So the next thing we see is Bulk and Skull, and they're now grabbing onto donuts. And so when looking at this seems to be the scene that was to be taken off the intro or to be used in the intro. So I'm curious if they specifically took this scene as like, well, hey, we're going to use this in the intro, so we're going to take away the trees and use this in the intro. Like, was that a plan or was that not a plan? Was that just a thing that they had just filmed so many episodes already and then they just use the intro after the fact? I'm just kind of curious of how exactly that works. Plus, I'm also just kind of curious about how they do intros in shows whatsoever. Because in sometimes they go on and they do the intro and they take it from like very like just early episodes and they just use that intro over and over and over again, or they film way ahead of time and then eventually they use so many clips uh for the intro. So like there are times when I would go on and I would see that they would film like a whole season and use the intro as like a whole season of footage. And then there's also certain times where it's just like uh, any combination of just stuff that they just do at some points. So it's kind of interesting to just see how they do that or how they go about that. So and also like why did they ever have a TV intro? Like why did that become just a thing? Um, but anyways, so I guess probably a commercial break. Probably it was an easy commercial break thing. I don't know. So Becky makes her way to Bulk and Skull, complaining that she cannot find Kimberly anywhere, that she's looking for her, and that Kimberly is missing. Bulk and Skull go on to tell Becky that it's like, well, if anything, we gotta pretty soon here go on and change into our costumes for the party. But Bulk goes on to tell Becky, it's like, well, hey, if you see a Santa anytime in this party later, uh, let him know that Kimberly is to go missing, and maybe he'll go on and he'll help you, because Bulk is going to be Santa later on. Plus, Kimberly and or Bulk and Skull kind of turn to one another. It's like, well, hey, it's not like Kimberly to flake out. Obviously, you guys don't know Kimberly all that often. Like, yeah, you would go on to see every single one of these Rangers kind of disappear or any number of things. So, yeah, for Kimberly to be unusual for her to kind of flake out, honestly doesn't make sense for them to even say that, because it is kind of like Kimberly to do that so often. So, the next thing we see is the Rangers huddled together. So, they're coming up with a theory that they have to test to see if it'll work. And so, the next thing we see is Rito kind of around the elves and Santa, who is still tied up here. Kimberly and Aisha call over elf number one and start talking to her, because eventually they're going to put this plan together. So Kimberly and Aisha show themselves to Rito. Rito then goes on and follows both Kim and Aisha outside to then have Rito try to use his sword as some kind of magical blast, which doesn't work, and if anything, just the blast just falls onto the ground. So the Rangers go on to realize that Rito has no magical ability here. So they're like, okay, like we're kind of at an even playing field kind of here right now. So it is kind of interesting. Like, did they ever not have Rito in like this Christmas getup? If honestly, if they could have made just an extra action figure out of this, that should have been the thing to do. Maybe if they were to do Super 7, maybe they should have gone on and done that. As far as just chucking this extra Christmas design for this character. Because, yeah, that's the one thing that would kind of stick out. But anyways, maybe that's one thing that at some point probably someone is going to do, like a custom character just specifically of that. That would be interesting. So, shortly thereafter, uh, Goldar is with the kids here, or with the teenagers with attitudes. Goldar then appears, and the Rangers all start to take all these snowballs out, and they start chucking it at Rito and chucking it at Goldar. I'm kind of curious who is to be the best person to make snowballs, or if a lot of these snowballs were pre-made to kind of be at the Rangers' feet to just be like, hey, instead of you making all these snowballs, just grab all these that are on the ground. Because I'm sure that's what they did for them. But I would go on to also see like Billy and Adam in the background actually physically making snowballs. So I'm like, shouldn't they have been pre-made snowballs that they could have just grabbed off the ground? But I guess that's just not how it works. So after Rito and Goldar continue to get pelted by snowballs, they run back into Santa's home to eventually get tripped by this rope, and they fall over. Santa has Tengu warriors next to him, and the Tengu warriors end up running out to eventually try and stop the Power Rangers. The elves go on and they take these bowls, and they drop all these bowls that have all these candies or these marbles or whatever they all are. and the Tengu warriors trip and fall, and they get taken out. Shortly thereafter that, the Rangers and the Elves all wrap Rito and the Tengu warriors all up with ribbon, and Tommy ends up calling Alpha, which is also kind of weird how exactly the communicators actually work, but I guess that's more science than actual magic. So I guess that's how the communicators still work at least. So Tommy calls Alpha to tell Alpha that there's going to be a special delivery for Lord Zen and Rita, and so the delivery is to be the monsters. So shortly thereafter that, Santa and the elves are to go on and realize that they need help being able to put the last bit of toys together. And so the Rangers are like, well, hey, like, we're here. Like, how about we go on and we help them? Like, maybe this will kind of turn the tide and this will maybe help them out. So we start to see the elves and Rangers all working together to help out Santa. So we now see Rita and Zed, and in front of them there's to be Rito and Golar, and the Tenga's all just tied together in all this ribbon. And Zed ends up turning to Rita and says, I hate this time of year. And then they cut back to the Rangers all at the Santa shop and trying to get all the presents together. We just see just a chucking of presents. We're seeing Rocky, he's getting chucked a present. We're seeing Billy, he's going on and he's grabbing a present and putting it elsewhere. Tommy, he's holding on to some white Christmas wrapping paper boxes, and he's putting it in a sack somewhere. So they finally have gotten everything on time, and everything is going well. So Santa ends up going on and telling the Rangers that he's going to give him a special sack for them to take to the youth center to give to all the girls and boys there. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. So it's like, that's nice. That's nice. So Santa's to also have this Z box that he tells the Rangers to hope to take that back with them as well. So Tommy ends up telling Santa that the kids are really going to appreciate this. So we now cut to the lower palace, or the lower deck of Moon Palace. So we have Rita, we have Zed, and we have all the other bad guys. They all go on and they open up this box, and they start to get presents out of it. So Rito ends up going on and handing Goldar a present, which it's nice. It's just nice of all this. So the next thing we see is Bulk and Skull, and of course Bulk is Santa, ending up having to ask the kids what all they want for Christmas. So eventually, one by one, all these kids go on and tell Bulk exactly what they want for Christmas. And then there's one kid with this huge, massive list. And Bulk is like, oh my God, like just reading off all this list. And it's like, oh my God. So Tommy and the Rangers make their way to the youth center, and they showcase the sack and tell the kids to come all around. So all these kids are just pulling off all these presents, and here's where we get the moment where Kimberly is going to reveal to Becky that her father is there. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Heck yeah. That's a vicious high if I've ever seen one. So, Becky and her father reunite as if they've never seen one another before, because they probably haven't. And so they hug it out. And so Becky's father goes on and he tells her, I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner. I promise from now on, I'm going to spend more time with you. Yeah, like let's figure out how to work that around your work schedule, buddy. Like, yeah, like it's okay. Like, freaking, like your kids are gonna have to just understand. Um, like it's just the way the world works. Um, Plus, also, there's a lot of times where a lot of parents, like, they try to work their schedule around their kids, and that's really nice. But we don't live in a perfect world either. Anyways, so uh, Becky is just so happy that her father is here to see her sing, and really, that was the only thing that she actually wanted for Christmas. And so Becky goes on and she speaks with Bulk. And Bulk, of course, gives her like, well, hey, what do you like for Christmas? And Becky goes on to say, it's like, well, hey, you already gave me the one thing that I wanted for Christmas, and I just wanted to spend more time with my father. And if anything, Santa, I think that you were the one who was to have orchestrated this all. So I really thank you for going on and doing that. And Bulk is like, oh, well, like I didn't really, but uh, but Bulk is just like, well, hey, like, hey, that's nice. So, and it's like, well, that's what all Christmas is really about, isn't it? So, so the next thing we see as after Skull is just blubbering, and it's nice. It's nice to just like, yeah, like get that cry out. All right. So the next thing we see is again Tommy and Kimberly underneath a mistletoe, and this time around they're actually going to smooch. Yeah, get that smooch, smooch it up. So whatever, just whatever I'm saying at this point. Oh my god, uh, we're at the home stretch. I hope. But if anything, the next thing we see right after that, after both Tommy and Kimberly do their smooching, we then go on to see that Kimberly's mom has made her way back from Paris. Kimberly's mom goes on to explain that she was able to get a flight out and see her for Christmas. And so the two of them hug and reunite, and such a nice thing to see. I'm not quite sure if uh, of which Kimberly's dad this is. Like, I don't think that this is to actually be the painter guy. It might be Kimberly's other father. So, also, like, yeah, whatever happened to Kimberly's other father? Because, like, so, like, because Kimberly could have just gone on and could have just lived with her other father instead of her French artist father. But yeah, but that just never happened. So, I don't know, I was a little bit confused by all that. And that was never clarified in the show either. Uh, but anyways, so but Kim is with Aisha's family now, and that's just how things are to work. Uh, you know what? Also, like, I'm trying to remember Aisha's father because in my like God, so because in my mind I'm like, did Bexy did Bexy's like I was trying to think if Becky's father was actually Aisha's father that they just reused here without me thinking about it, but I'm like, no, 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 no. Like Aisha's father looks kind of similar to Becky's dad, but it's not the same actor. Yeah, I just kind of confirmed that in my brain. I don't know why that just popped in there. Like, is did they just reuse this same guy and didn't bother to? No, I think it is different. Uh, so let's get into this. So the next thing we see is the kids all gathering around the choir, and they're gonna go on and sing "Silent Night, Holy Night," as of course Aisha is conducting them. And Skull again is continuing to cry, which is okay. It's cool. Cry during the freaking holidays. So the next thing we see is everybody gathering together, all the cast of this episode, and they go on and they give everybody a Merry Christmas, and we get the heck out of there. We get the credits. Yeah, last episode, uh, a Ranger catastrophe, part one. God, we're at the home stretch. I'm so worried that I'm going to lose this footage or something's going to happen. Please hold up so I can get this done. Home stretch, everybody, and we're under 3 hours, so hopefully I can just get this done in a suitable amount of time that doesn't take 3 hours. Hopefully, let's. If anything, maybe we'll get a little bit over. I hope. Because I don't know how many times we've had so many reviews that have been like 5 hours or way even more than that. So this will be good. So, into this last episode, we make our way into an animal shelter that is just to be named Animal Shelter. Wow, how creative. So, the episode starts with Dr. Wheeler with Aisha going on and taking care of a dog. A dog. We have Aisha and we have Dr. Wheeler that is ironically talking about how there's not enough money for this animal shelter to take care of all the animals. But eventually there's going to be soon be another cat stray that they're going to have to take care of, even though they don't have money to. So, but I think this is kind of a nice episode for maybe the parents while watching this episode with their kid to be like, well, hey, maybe we should donate to animal shelters. If anything, yeah, if you have financially some money, yeah, might as well donate if you can. So, because I know times are rough right now, and the world we live in is to be a very scary place quite often. But hopefully, people will if they have the money to, hopefully they can donate. Anyways, so uh as Dr. Wheeler and Aisha are taking care of this pet, it's starting to dawn on Aisha how late it's starting to get. So Dr. Wheeler turns to Aisha and asks her, it's like, well, hey, same time tomorrow. And Aisha has to say, you bet. And then we get to see this dog. uh, so I love pets. Sorry. So, of course, sucker me into this episode. So, and I've gone on to talk about this episode already, so uh, I'm sure it'll be word for word or verbatim, like the same thing at some point that I probably said through any number of these things. So Aisha goes on and meets up with Kimberly and mentions how great it was working at the animal shelter and working with animals. And Kimberly ends up asking if it makes Aisha sad at all of how a lot of the animals won't have homes. And so all of a sudden, after saying that, we then see a cat that is just out and about. Just this white cat, white as the driven snow. Well, maybe not driven snow, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I mean, Vern? So Aisha goes on and Aisha and Kimberly goes on to notice this cat and start petting it and picking it up. I don't know if I would pick up a pet right away. That's just out in this. You don't know if it has rabies. You don't know what it has. Uh, if anything, that's horrible to say, but also I'm just like I had gone onto myself find a cat at my store that was just kind of hidden away, and I myself tried to go on and tried to rescue this cat. Like I had my mother bring me this cat carrying thing that we had, and I was trying to get to the cat so that way I can go on and hopefully do something for it. But what happened was, as I was trying to get the cat to come to this cage thing, because I wasn't going to try and pick it up or anything, because there was no way I was going to do that. The cat got scared and it ran off. And then I'm like, oh, like I was just trying to help you. I was just trying to help you. So that just kind of sucked. But like, at least I was willing to do that good deed that eventually just the cat just wasn't receptive to. Um, but yeah, but the cat was just meowing and meowing, and I just felt so bad. And that's how I found out that the cat was where it was. Because also, uh, the cat was at a place where we normally would go on and kind of just smush things down. So I was trying to get the cat out of there so the cat wouldn't have gotten killed. So I was trying to protect the cat. It didn't know that. Just dumb cat, I was trying to help you. You didn't take the bait. Anyways. So, back to the story here. So, Kimberly and Aisha are holding onto this cat and they're petting it and they're saying how beautiful it is. Rita through her repelloscope or whatever it's called. I'm gonna just say telescope because I'm not gonna try to figure out this goofy name. Because I know everybody likes exact names for everything. I'm sorry if I'm not going to be exact for once. So, Rita goes on and looks at her telescope and is to see that Kimberly and Aisha have this cat. Zed is kind of confused that Rita is to be happy by both Aisha and Kimberly having this cat. Zed is kind of confused. It's like, why is exactly you're just so happy about this? And how is it that a cat is going to play into their plans? So as Rita kind of walks off, uh, Rita ends up telling Zed after they kind of talk about 10,000 years and all these kinds of things. Rita goes on and tells Zed that she's going to love his next plan. And eventually, the further and further the Rita walks off, and she's just kind of touting about how perfectly her plan is working out. And Rito is even asking, like, Zed is like, well, what's up with her? And Zed is like, I don't know, she's probably up to something. So Rita is to finally reveal that the Rangers had completely fallen for the bait of the cat. And that they have fallen for her feline friend. For them to just kind of get ready and fasten their seatbelts because this is going to be a bumpy ride. So we have Aisha. She's at the outside of the youth center, sitting down with all the other rangers around. And it's kind of funny, like Bulk and Skull come in and they're talking about like safety codes and health violations and whatever, and it's kind of funny. And Aisha's to be holding onto this cat. She's looking at like Bulk and Skull's like it's like shut up, like, because Aisha just came by just to talk to the Rangers, and then shortly thereafter that she's going to the animal shelter to drop this cat off. So Aisha is going on and talking to Kimberly and telling her, because she talked to Dr. Wheeler, that Aisha is going to go on and try and be sure uh, that this cat is to be found by the original owners, or to just be claimed by somebody. And if the cat doesn't get claimed uh, by the first 24 hours of them having this cat at the animal shelter, that Aisha and Kimberly will be able to take this pet with them so that way they can keep it permanently. So Aisha then goes on and leaves, and so do Bulk and Skull. Bulk and Skull realize that what they should actually go on and do is that they should go on and they should try to figure out who is to be the owner of this cat, so that way they can return the cat to the person, so they can get some reward, or that they can possibly get something out of this. So that's what Bulk and Skull have planned. So now we make our way to Aisha bringing in this cat to Dr. Wheeler, and talking about how beautiful the cat is, and how if someone is to lose the cat, maybe they'll contact us. If anything, Aisha is just so happy. It's like, well, hey, yeah, like I can't wait for, if no one claims this cat, for us to take this cat and just be roomies with it. So back to the Moon Palace, Zed goes on and talks to Rito, and Zed ends up telling Rito that he needs to make his way to the animal shelter to stop any other person from trying to get to this cat. So Rito is to appear in front of the animal shelter sign, just in broad daylight, just in front of this sign. And for anybody that goes on and makes their way to the animal shelter, he completely stops them dead in their tracks, scares the crap out of them, and forces them to go away, which was hilarious. So, after some certain point of Rito going on and continuing to do this, eventually Bulk and Skull, I guess, would be called, or had this be reported, and Bulk and Skull would make their way to the animal shelter to find Rito there, and is to try to arrest him or try to do something. But let's cut to this first. So, Dr. Wheeler ends up saying to Aisha if she has gone on to hear anything weird outside. Or no, it's either Aisha or it's either Dr. Wheeler. Either one of them go on and say if they heard anything weird outside. And if anything, I think Dr. Wheeler goes on to say that there's so many pets, there's so many noises, there's so many cats and birds and everything going on, that there's no way that she could hear any kind of unusual noise and not have it think that it's some kind of animal. So Aisha just kind of walks off and is like, okay, maybe she's just hearing things. So now back with Bulk and Skull. So Bulk and Skull are going on and thinking that they can go on and take on Rito by themselves. So they get ever so close to Rito, and Rito gets right up into Bulk and Skull's face, and Bulk and Skull end up backing off and realize that they should probably get back up. And if anything, they keep saying back up because they're going to back up and run away because they're scared. Eventually calling Lieutenant Stone to come with them to seek out this monster. And eventually, by the time that Lieutenant Stone and Bulk and Skull both make their way to the animal shelter, Rito is no longer there. So, cut to Aisha. Aisha is to go on and is to look at this certain medicine bottle, or whatever this bottle of thing is. And she's with the cat. So all of a sudden we have some screaming going on in the background. I don't know. I hear screaming and I just think it's a normal, common day-to-day thing. But Aisha hears screaming and she's like, "Oh, I gotta seek out what this is." So Aisha goes on and pokes her way out this window to come to find that Rito is to be outside the animal shelter. Aisha doesn't understand why Rito is going on and doing so, but she's like, well, okay, I'll just get out my ninja powers and whip his ass. So Aisha goes on and faces off against Rito in front of this animal shelter sign, and we get like it is so crazy how we go on and we see so many stunts where they're flipping and all these kind of like cool, awesome attacks, and I'm like, God dang, this is some impressive bullshit. So Aisha goes on and faces off against Rito, and it's like, give it up, Rito. So we're now at the outdoor part of the juice bar, and we now have Rocky with this huge, massive sandwich as if he's Shaggy from Scooby Doo. Well, even Scooby Doo from Scooby Doo, where he goes on and has this like big, huge, massive sandwich. Like this sandwich is like freaking here to here, and he's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. He's not gonna eat that sandwich. He's not gonna have a mouth for it. He's gonna have to like just chop it up in little pieces. Now, come on, Rocky, you're not gonna eat that whole sandwich. I bet he's gonna try though. Anyways, so Rocky goes on and is like, yeah, I've waited all day for this sandwich just to eventually yeah. Sucks to be you, Rocky. I don't know how many times we've had problems with Rocky eating food within the show. I think even God, what is it like I think there's a joke that he has something about a noodles at some point. But yeah, but even during Once and Always, like he appears in front of the Rangers and he's like eating like noodles or something. He's eating just Chinese food. So yeah, so I'm not here to fat shame Rocky or anything like that. I'm just to just straight up say that that Rocky, like man, like Rocky can put it away, and man, does he still look fantastic. He still looks fantastic. What is his secret? I want to know. So, again, the communicator goes off, and so the Rangers all get to a private place, and so Tommy answers the call. Zordon alerts the Rangers that they have to teleport to the Angel Grove Animal Shelter, and so they do. They get into their ninja powers, and all of a sudden, while Aisha is facing off against Rito, and Rito was telling Aisha about like, well, hey, well, you're not too tough without your friends around, are you? And then all of a sudden, poof, the Rangers all appear off of a clump of smoke. And so now, of course, Rito is to, of course, be outmatched here. And Tommy turns to Aisha and asks if she's okay. So, like, that's kind of nice that they, like, take this moment. Even though a lot of people are like, yeah, get to the fighting already. No, like, I like the moments where the team actually turns to one, like, hey, are you okay? Are you all right? Like, just take a break and, like, we'll fight off this guy and we'll fight him off. We'll fight him off for you. Like, I always like that in Power Rangers. Like, that's the one thing that I think, there were some times where I think it's missing in the show. But anyways. But I know that this show could be edited for time and whatever. Moving on. So the Ninjettis face off against Rito here, and Zed ends up going on to say, it's like, well, I take back what I said about your brother. He's a fool and he's a brainless twit. So Zed is to be frustrated because they're doing all this because of a stupid cat, and he doesn't believe that that Rita is to have a good plan, and he hopes that she will really have one, because his patience is very wearing thin. So they now have to realize that they're going to have to call upon the Tengas yet again. So all of a sudden, Rito is to find that Tengas are to appear by his side of like, oh, hey, all right. So we now have an even playing field here. So the Rangers, here's where they go in and they do that kind of that almost like pyramid pose, which I'm like, how did they do that? Um, and how also did they keep that pose? Because like, god dang, like that is really uh, horrible on those guys' shoulders. Uh, but man, whoever these people were that were doing this stunt work, god dang, are they strong? Unless it was just like, oh yeah, like it's an optical illusion. If anything, they're actually on stilts or they're actually on this or the. Like, really? Like, that'll probably ruin the stunt for me, but still, I think it's pretty impressive. Plus, also, I'm sure Tommy was jumping from out of a trampoline perfectly in through the circle, and I was like, dang, that's pretty challenging. So within a very small of an area to dive that. But anyways, plus also, I'm sure that probably hit freaking Rocky's back of the head with probably Tommy's feet, right? Anyways, so uh, so we have the Rangers and they go on and they attack the Tangas. We have Kimberly that goes on and she does the teleporting thing that has the Tanga just kind of running around, chicken in bit with bird head cut off. So here's where the Tanga ends up grabbing Billy, and then also they quickly grab Tommy because they can't stop grabbing Tommy. They just love to taste his body for some reason by grabbing him with the touch. So we now have Adam that goes on and uses this weird, goofy attack where he has this like I want to say it's like a weird like kind of uh like bit of like balls or something that kind of like he doesn't exactly Hadouken, but like there's kind of just this little bit of weird mesh that kind of goes out of his hands, and he does this kind of like weird blast that hits the Tangas. We also have Rocky here. Rocky here goes on and he does this trick with this tree, which I think was kind of an interesting camera effect, where the Tangas are trying to figure out where Rocky is within the tree, and then Rocky comes out of the tree and starts hitting the Tangas and taking them out. And he's like, pretty wild, huh? Bye-bye. So the next thing we see is the cat. And the cat is just popped in this window, just kind of like, like, hey, what's going on? The Rangers are fighting. Okay, go, whatever. So the next thing we see is the cat turns into Catherine. And it is kind of interesting to see this kind of this transformation for how they kind of do it in like slow motion to eventually just stop and you actually see Catherine. So I'm kind of curious how exactly they did this effect. Like I'm kind of curious if they went on to do like some kind of like makeup and then like they got to like the final form of Catherine. I'm kind of curious how exactly they did this shot. But anyways, moving on. So we have Aisha who's kind of playing a little bit of like the kind of the reindeer kind of weird kind of a joking. Oh, I guess it'd be more like this, like that, right? But she has a mask on, so it doesn't really work that perfectly. So Aisha does some flips here, and the Rangers all gather back together, and so shortly thereafter that, the Tengus and Rito decide to teleport out. Shortly. Oh wait. Oh, the Tango Warriors teleport out, but then Rito is to stay there. Rito ends up getting smashed into a tree as he falls backwards, and then he smashes into a tree. The Rangers end up making fun of him for how he just mistakenly just smashes into a tree the way he does. So now Catherine is at the animal shelter, and Dr. Wheeler notices her. Catherine makes this quick thing up where she is to be looking for an animal. She is to be looking for a puppy, even though she's a cat and probably won't work out. So it's interesting how Catherine actually has an accent, because more than likely, uh, it's kind of funny looking back at it now. Because at some point they would make a joke about people having New Zealand accents, because a lot of times the Rangers would get casted from New Zealand. So, but we have Catherine, who I guess ended up getting casted from Australia, and I think that's kind of just wild to just see where just casting comes from. Uh, or Catherine probably just went to the States and she probably just had this accent. Who knows? But anyways, if anything, I would have to probably see the Power Rangers playback. Maybe Catherine had said that at some point. Uh, but the Power Rangers playback has kind of been commandeered and taken over by some other entity, some kind, somebody hacked into their stuff. So if anything, I would say just don't support that channel right now, because it's kind of been taken over. Eventually, when Catherine and Nakia, when they hopefully get it back at some point, hopefully they'll go on and uh, they'll come back and they'll start putting back together content. But until that time happens, we'll have to see some weird, goofy Trump thing that's going on with whatever they're doing. So Dr. Wheeler is taking Catherine to go and see some pets for her to not take any of them. So, because of course she doesn't really have a home either. So after the Rangers all defeat Rito and the Tengas, they get out of their ninja powers, and Aisha is to go on and realize that it's about closing time in the animal shelter, and it's time uh, to have Aisha collect the cat because no one else is going to have collected it. So Dr. Wheeler goes on and tries to take Catherine around, but then eventually Cat ends up turning back into an actual animal cat again. So Aisha, Kimberly, and Tommy go on to make their way to Dr. Wheeler. And Dr. Wheeler says, like, well, hey, I was just showing this girl around. Oh, yeah, well, like, oh, she just disappeared. Oh, well. So all of a sudden, the white cat ends up coming to frame. And so Aisha goes on and she ends up taking the cat. And it's like, okay, well, I guess we could probably take the cat, right? And Dr. Wheeler's like, well, yeah, sure you can, because nobody came to claim it. So, yeah, go on and take the cat. So, they're trying to figure out a name for the cat. And so Aisha settles on calling it just PC. Politically correct? whatever other PC is to be it. Uh, but so Aisha says that it was a park cat. So that's why they're just going to call the cat PC, which I'm like, okay, I guess there could have been a worse name to call this cat, but whatever. So Kimberly ends up starting to pet the cat, and the cat goes and starts clawing on Kimberly, sadly enough. So I'm like, God dang, cat! Like, I know that you might not like Kimberly, but come on. Anyways, uh, so next up we go on to have Kimberly, and she's getting into a completely different wardrobe because she wants to look nice for Tommy. Because Kimberly and Tommy are finally now going on another date to supposedly go to the movies, which will not happen, sadly enough. So Kimberly is to say to Aisha that she wants to spend more time with Tommy because, if anything, she's been so distracted with gymnastics lately. Because of course she is. So what eventually ends up happening as both Aisha and Kimberly are talking and talking about how great a guy Tommy is, and eventually all of a sudden the cat is going to get out of the house, and Aisha mentions how there's doors and windows open. Oh no! So Kimberly and Aisha start looking for PC, and they keep calling her, even though I'm sure the cat won't respond to that because it's so early with the cat needing to know its name. As well as also, it's kind of hard to give a pet a name that will actually stick and it will respond to sometimes, um, when it doesn't actually have a name. Um, because sometimes also you want to try to give your dog a different name than what it already has, because sometimes the name that it's already given, it's like, man, this name sucks. So you want to try to give your dog a different name, but it just won't respond to it. So it's just like, well, that sucks. Like I had gone to even seen a video uh, of someone going on and try to teach how to like reprogram. Well, reprogram is a hard word. Reprogram your dog or pet or whatever to get a new name. So I'm like, okay, maybe that could be a whenever I get a new pet at some point, maybe I'll take that into mind. Um, but if anything, yeah, I don't think we're gonna get a new pet anytime soon. Sadly enough, after our cat passed away. Uh, but anything, yeah, cat named Autumn. So, uh, yeah, it just dawned on me now. Oh yeah, I'm just well, uh, it's been some time ago, but still, it's still, yeah, is what it is. So, uh, Kimberly and I should go on to try to find PC, and then eventually PC ends up turning into Catherine, and so Catherine is just kind of looking on to see what Aisha and Kimberly are doing. So all of a sudden in the background we now see Rita. Rita is going on of like, hey, Catherine, spill the beans. Tell me what's going on. You're late. So Catherine goes on to tell Rita about how Kimberly was going to go on a date with Tommy and how they're going to go on and now wreck that up. Kimberly's like, or Rita's like, okay, well, good. Then since you're giving me this intel, like I'm going to go on and I'm going to make this dumpster in a car for you, so that way you can go on and drive this car, so that way you can get to Tommy, so that way you can split Tommy away from Kimberly. It's kind of interesting when Tommy and Catherine are are just sucked into that dimension and they're together. And while the rest of the Rangers are watching on the viewing globe, Kimberly goes on and she's looking at the viewing globe, and eventually what comes out of her mouth is like, who's that girl? And I thought that was freaking hilarious. Because I'm just like, yeah, that still lands. That's still freaking funny. And like, yeah, Kimberly should be like, well, yeah, who's that girl on Tommy's arms? What the heck is going on? Because yeah, like maybe just small part of jealousy, but also like it's just kind of funny to just say that line. But anyways, let's cut back to this. So we see that Catherine, her eyes are glowing red. If to not tell us that she's evil already, we have to have her eyes turn a different color. So at the youth center, Tommy has drank, if I could say drink, a number of glasses of uh, of 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 stuff at this point at the juice bar, and so Tommy turns to Ernie and says, like, well, hey, like, have you seen Kimberly lately? Because I'm supposed to meet her here. And Ernie says, well, yeah, like coincidentally, she had called earlier and she had mentioned um, that she's going on and she's looking for her cat right now and she'll be late. and and I guess Ernie uh, had needed to give that message to Tommy. I guess just the message didn't pan out that well. So Tommy is now sitting down, just kind of still waiting for Kimberly, and all of a sudden Catherine arrives. And it is kind of fitting that eventually both Tommy and Kimberly, or Tommy and Catherine, end up together for kind of their origins of them both being evil characters that eventually turn good. So, yeah, it does really make a lot of sense that eventually they end up together uh, for just the origin of their characters being so similar. So, Catherine meets up with Tommy and explains that her car had broken down, and she's hoping a guy like Tommy would be able to fix her car for her. And so Tommy at first is mentioning, like, well, yeah, I am kind of waiting for somebody, but I'll go on and I'll help you out. And so uh, Tommy goes on and introduces himself and is to say nice to meet her. And then Tommy goes on to say to Ernie, it's like, well, hey, if Kimberly comes by, explain to her that I'd gone on to help a girl out with her car, and I'll be back soon. So Tommy goes on and meets up with Catherine at her car. Tommy goes on and figures out a way to fix Catherine's problem with her car, and then goes on to eventually realize, man, like this car is pretty sweet. I'd always loved to drive a car like this. And Catherine's like, oh, like, how about you go on and how about you take it for a drive? And Tommy's like, I don't know. Like, I am kind of waiting for somebody. But Tommy ends up getting so enticed and taking this car for a ride. And in the license plate, it says like perfect or per or something like that. So Tommy goes on and drives off with Catherine on his arm. And the next thing we see is Bulk and Skull with Lieutenant Stone to try to find where Rito is, and he's nowhere to be found. Lieutenant Stone gets so upset with Bulk and Skull that he goes on and he tells them that the only thing that Bulk and Skull will ever be backing up will be police cars to wash them for the rest of their lives, to say just how upset he is. So the next thing we see is Rita. Rita goes on and looks through her telescope to notice that Tommy and Catherine are driving this car. So the next thing we see is Tommy and Catherine being caught in this dimensional portal. To where, of course, Catherine is so scared, she grasps onto Tommy's shoulder. So Rita and Zed turn to Rito, and they decide to give Rito the ability to just kind of take care of the rest of the Rangers and make himself useful. And so Rito goes on and leaves, and Rita and Zed both take their staves and make Rito grow. And so Aisha and Kimberly have made their way to the youth center. And bizarrely in the background, there is this weight scale that I don't know why it's there. I don't get why it's there. But it's there regardless. So Kimberly and Aisha meet up with the rest of the Rangers and Ernie. Ernie goes on to explain what had happened to Tommy and that he had been fixing a car and that he'll be right back. But then eventually the Rangers end up getting a communicator call. Zordon ends up explaining to the Rangers that they need to make their way to the command center right away, so they teleport. The Rangers make their way to the command center so that way Zordon could explain to them via the viewing globe how Tommy and Catherine are to be stuck in this dimensional portal, as well as also Rito is wreaking havoc. upon the city as he's gigantic. They're trying to figure out what is going on with Tommy. They're trying to figure out what the heck to do. And this basically cuts off with the to be continued. So if anything, I'm going to get that out of here now that I can upload this. Thank God. Because I had to do this freaking twice, and I am now freaking exhausted. So thank God I was able to put this video out. I really appreciate me finally you finally going on and be able to watch another Power Rangers episode review, uh, because it has been so long since doing it, and I do still love reviewing Power Rangers. I do still enjoy talking about it. There are also just certain times where, when watching just too much of Power Rangers, like in the early goings, I'm like, man, this is just like, I'm pulling teeth watching these episodes just for how poorly edited they are, how poor the stories were. Uh, I think most of the time now, like, I am to be more in the positive than in the negative. So that's nice. That's nice to get that change, because most of the time I'm just like, good God, just like the story doesn't make sense. Like, there's so many problems with each episode. There's so many editing problems that it's getting ridiculous. Finally, when they were to stop going into so much Sentai footage and trying to just scrape the bottom of the barrel of every little sliver of Sentai footage they can get, to finally just start to do this more original stuff was a sigh of relief. I enjoyed when they were going on through the Sentai footage. Believe me, like, I liked how they were trying to fit all this stuff in. Uh, but also, like, once it got further and further past a certain extent of Mighty Morphin, it was like, okay, the footage is no longer matching up anymore, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's getting just more and more just stupid. To where I was like, again, it got to the point where I would say that thing of Lie to Me More, where I feel that these episodes are going on and give me a good enough story to where I feel significantly lied to, or significantly like, okay, like, I feel that I have a good investment of my time when watching these episodes now. Because before I would just be like, God dang, like, they're so milking and stretching this out. Like, I don't feel like these episodes are exactly doing that. So I'm kind of in a sigh of relief of that, to just be like, uh, okay enough with these episodes. So, with that said, I'm gonna get that out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for watching this, and like, I'm just so happy to be able to continue to keep doing these videos, and hopefully I'll go on and be able to cover more ground on other kind of bits of content that is outside just doing reviews. But I also want to try to keep getting back into reviews and start doing those. But I also kind of want to not have to do the exact same thing all the time. And I think reviews was just too much of the same thing. Like, I'm having a lot of fun just covering comic book covers and comic books. I'm having a lot of fun just diving into my physical media collection, because I have just a huge chunk of it still that I have to cover at some point. Um, and I'm just having a lot of fun just doing what I'm been doing recently, even with some physical issues that I've kind of had for day to days and stuff like that. So I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, bye.